like to call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the San Mateo Union High School District Board of Trustees. I'm calling open session to order. Today is March 12th and it's 7 o'clock, depending on which clock you look at.
You're correct.
Roll call, Trustee Chavez.
Present.
Trustee Jacobson.
Present.
Trustee Land. Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
Presente.
Okay, and I am here. Tonight, we have a team from Hannah Interpreting as our Spanish interpreters. For those who would like to attend the meeting virtually in Spanish, that option is available. Hannah Interpreting, would you please communicate that for us this evening? Thank you.
Good evening. In order to provide language access, this meeting will have simultaneous interpretation in English and Spanish. To enable the interpretation, if you are using your laptop or desktop, please locate the icon shaped like a globe at the bottom of your screen, click on Language Interpretation, and then select English. If you are on your phone, iPad, or similar device, then locate the three-dot menu in the upper right corner of your screen, click on Language Interpretation, and select English. Buenas tardes. A efecto de proporcionar acceso lingüístico, esta reunión cuenta con interpretación simultánea al español. Si necesita interpretación en español y está en su computadora portátil o de escritorio, ubique el icono con forma de globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla, haga clic en Interpretación de idioma y luego seleccione Español. Si está en su teléfono, iPad o dispositivo similar, busque el menú de 3 puntos en la esquina superior derecha de su pantalla, haga clic en Interpretación de idioma y luego seleccione Español o Spanish. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. If you wish to view closed captions of this meeting, please view the meeting on SMUHSD Board Meeting YouTube channel. The link to the YouTube channel can be found on our website. You may view the captions in English as we live stream our meeting tonight, and you may view the captions in a variety of other languages if you choose to watch after this meeting has ended. Viewers may request additional accommodations by calling 650-558-2201. That's 650-558-2201. For our deaf and hard of hearing community, we have a team from Hannah Interpreting Services, and they will be interpreting our meeting this evening. We would like to ask everyone to speak at a clear and reasonable pace for our interpreters. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask the student board members to lead us.
The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Report of actions taken in closed session. There were no actions taken in closed session. Item J, adopt the agenda. The Board of Trustees may either adopt the agenda as presented or make a change to the agenda through a motion, second, and majority vote. The Brown Act prohibits any additions to the agenda without a 72-hour public notice for any regularly scheduled board meeting. Are there any questions or comments from the Board of Trustees, our superintendent, with respect to the agenda? Okay, I'll call on myself. Okay, I'd like to propose, and we're trying something different tonight, and you know, we'll figure it out. I'd like to propose that we have item K4, the superintendent's report, actually move to the first item under regular reports, which I think is the way it normally is sequenced. So will anybody entertain that?
Yes, I'll second your motion.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we've adopted the agenda. Actually, were there any public comments on that?
There were none.
Okay. And student board representatives. This is the first time I forgot to call on you separately, but probably won't be the last time tonight, but how do you vote on that?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Regular reports this report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of announcements here to begin with. First, we celebrated the completion of construction of the baseball multi-use field at Aragon High School on March 4th. Thank you to Board Vice President, Trustee Chavez, for speaking on behalf of the board, and for Trustees Jennifer Jacobson and Ligia Andrade Zuniga for being there to share in the celebration. The board approved the budget for this project, which was $8.46 million, and the work will be completed on budget. There's no way we could have done this without the support of our community, our voters and taxpayers who supported Measure L, a $385 million general obligation bond back in 2020. So big thanks to the community, big thanks to our facilities team, our bond program team, our construction management team, all the contractors. It really takes a tremendous amount of teamwork to make projects like that happen, especially on budget. So I really appreciate it, Mr. Hawkins, your whole team there. So thank you. Mills High School, we decided to postpone, unfortunately, our ribbon cutting at Mills High, which was scheduled for 5:30 p.m. tomorrow, due to the possibility of the weather that we're experiencing, and we didn't want to slosh around and, all of that. So we rescheduled the event for May 9th at 4:30 p.m., May 9th, just before the school's La Fiesta event. And we hope for sunnier skies, obviously, and we will be really, really excited to unveil the new front facade and the improvements at that time. And if you haven't been by there, it's amazing. It really, really looks great. So I look forward to our ribbon cutting back on May 9th. Just on a couple of more dedicated superintendent topics, I just returned from the Association of School Superintendents National Conference on Education, where I was able to connect with superintendent colleagues from all over the country. I got to sit at a table with Nebraska and Wyoming, Virginia, Texas, lots of different cities in Texas, Idaho, I don't know, the list goes on. And it's just both eye-opening about the issues that various superintendents in various sizes. I sat with a superintendent from Lompoc County in Virginia, 92,000 students, 90 schools, and got to sit one-on-one with him and talk a little bit about controversial topics and board policy and all those kinds of things. I appreciated the opportunity not only to learn from colleague superintendents, but also, I think just as important, to be reaffirmed on the things that we're doing really well in this district. And I got a lot of that, actually. These conferences, they give me the opportunity to reflect on the district goals that the board has instructed me and my teams to work on, and that are aligned to the LCAP, or our local control accountability plan. And I want to spend a few moments just kind of recentering us on those goals. We have 2.5 months left of school. That's it. 10 weeks. 10 weeks. And it's not very much time at all. And there's still a lot to get done. And I was sharing with some colleagues of mine the other day that, we are in the heart of March, and it is a tough month to be in. No breaks. It's long. The weather's turning. People are tired. And I have a lot of educators who are, working through the leadership and the management of this particular school year, but simultaneously planning for next year. And so that takes a toll. But going back to our goals, because I think it's important that we revisit these quite a bit, especially at board meetings, to help us communicate to our constituents and remind one another, what we're here doing, what we're trying to achieve. Our first LCAP goal is a safe and connected community. It reads, "We are dedicated as a district to creating a welcoming, culturally responsive, and supportive culture and community in our schools and across the district. Effective learning environments are created when students, staff, and families are emotionally, physically, and socially safe." Our second goal, entitled Humanizing Education, all students will participate in learning experiences that are joyful, uplifting, empowering, and validating of their identities. And that one, and I've shared this a lot with the trustees and my colleagues, that particular goal is so personally important to me, and it's not necessarily what I experienced in parts of my own high school career. And I would say it's reflective of why I became an educator, so that I can help through the support of our teams and our educators across the district, our families, the board, that we can help students experience joyful, uplifting, and empowering opportunities in the classroom. And goal number 3, empowering staff, ensuring that staff have and utilize the tools, resources, training, and professional learning that promotes a culture of well-being and learning among students. I talked about how we only have about 10 weeks left. Our focus, and I've talked with principals about this, I've talked to cabinet about this, we have to graduate and support our seniors. We have a motto in this district: all students graduate. That's what we're aspiring to. All students thrive. That's what we're aspiring to. And we have 10 weeks to make that work, especially for our seniors. I take that very, very seriously. It's a conviction I hold behind all the work that I do here. And we're going to really focus on that over the next 10 weeks. But we also have other topics that the board has placed quite a bit of emphasis on, and I appreciate it because it aligns with my own values as well. And that's our support for the students that, when we look at the data, are either the most marginalized or struggling the most, either academically or socially or behaviorally, attendance. We can go down all the data points, but our Latino students, Pacific Islander students, our multilingual learner students, and continuing to work hard to develop initiatives, meet them where they're at, help understand their families and what the needs are there across our district. And we'll continue to do that work. Lastly, not leastly, is how much work we have in the next 10 weeks to plan for the fall of 2025. I'm really excited about the fall of 2025 and welcoming a whole new crop of freshman students from our feeder districts and working with them. But we have a lot to do between now and then. The amount of hiring of exceptional educators. I'm really proud to announce that the positions that we've posted, we have had multiple applicants for. I would argue that most school districts can't boast that. And I'm proud to be able to say that that's what we're experiencing. I know our principals and our counselors and our assistant principals are working hard at master scheduling. And that's important work because we want to make sure students have the courses they need in order to thrive and to graduate. And lastly, and Yancy, you'll like that I said this, the amount of work that we have in front of us, budgeting and making sure or ensuring that we have a healthy budget. We have a healthy budget for negotiations. We have a healthy budget for the initiatives we want to champion moving forward so that we can achieve our goals. I'm proud to be part of a professional cabinet, professional set of educators, a professional set of governance team. I say this all the time with anyone who will listen. I love this district. It's a very, very special district. And I'll leave you with this. One of the key pieces that I learned from this conference is that our role as district leaders are to be ambassadors of dialogue, that we need to lean into conflict, lean into dialogue, be listeners, be open. And one colleague of mine at the conference shared with me that it's important for superintendents, and I would say this for everyone, but he was talking to me as in my role, that it is so important that anyone I come in contact with in the educational setting, whether it be a parent, a board member, an educator, a student, we all have a foundational parallel, a foundational connection with one another. And that is, it doesn't matter what our points of view are, we're all here in the care of students. That board members wouldn't run for office if they didn't care for students. It's a thankless job. It's a hard job. Educators wouldn't be in their roles if they didn't care for students. And families wouldn't engage and certainly wouldn't come to the podium. Even if I disagree with what they have to say, they wouldn't come to the podium if they didn't care about kids. And I think it's something we can hang our hat on and find some common ground with. And it's something that's been bolstering me over the last couple of days. And I've been trying to shout it from the mountaintops a little bit with everyone that I've spoken to. I think that's important, and I think it will serve students and families in the long run. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. Looking forward to the rest of the board meeting.
Thank you. Report of the District Teachers Association representatives.
There you go.
Oh, it's new to me. Zoom doesn't work that way. Good evening, President Griffin, members of the board, district cabinet, and colleagues in the audience. I'll be brief tonight, and I'm going to share some of my time with Carla Cordy, our negotiations chair. In light of the reaction to my comments at the last meeting, I feel compelled to set the record straight. My primary purpose here tonight is to clarify my serious concerns and objective position to the trustees, as it seems that others have misunderstood or not read my comments. It's unfortunate that I have to do this. Any careful reader of my letter to the board or any active listener to my comments would understand that most of the reaction is misguided, misdirected, and unfounded. As I stated unequivocally in my comments, I respect and champion the right to free speech and freedom of expression. My comments were not focused on Trustee Jacobson's personal opinions or perspectives on any particular issue. To be clear, I mentioned ethnic studies exactly once, to express support for teachers and the public and democratic process that the board undertook to approve the curriculum. That's it. It is as if the trustee and her supporters have conflated two very different issues. One, the concern I raised about trustee roles, responsibility, and duty, and two, their apparent disdain for the ethnic studies curriculum. Simply stated, ethnic studies has absolutely nothing to do with my concern over Trustee Jacobson's comments at the recent forum. After the last meeting and in reflecting on the recent San Mateo Daily Journal article, including many colorful letters to the editor that continue to perpetuate a false narrative of our position, I remembered back to some of the comments made at the December 15th, 2022 board meeting when Trustee Jacobson was sworn in. I recalled the significant praise expressed for outgoing trustees Hanley and Lees Dwyer. Commenters included Trustee Griffin, Trustee Land, former Superintendent Skelly, Supervisor and former Trustee Dave Pine, and multiple principals and other electeds. I confess I had to go back to YouTube to remember the full list. As I watched the speakers, I was struck by the consistency in their message. In some way, all of the speakers noted how important and impactful that while Hanley and Lees Dwyer had such strong opinions and often disagreed with other trustees, as we always sometimes do, but they always voted their conscience and they always supported the board decision. They were praised for many individual contributions, but what was most valued by those who spoke was Hanley's and Lees Dwyer's admirable stewardship of the district. According to the California School Boards Association, trustees have a responsibility to, among other things, keep learning and achievement for all students as a primary focus. Understand that authority rests with the board as a whole and not with individuals. Value, support, and advocate for public education. Act responsibly and be responsive to the values, beliefs, and priorities of the stated community. It was in this context with which it was this context and with this perspective that I criticized the trustees' actions. Trustee Jacobson did not simply communicate options available to parents. Instead, she stated, quote, as a school board member, the best way to elicit action by district officials is to raise official complaints. She mentioned no collaborative or informative paths. Trustee Jacobson went on to suggest lawsuits and OCR complaints with express goals of tying up valuable resources and funding to get attention, to cause a response. As a trustee, I'm sure she can think of more productive ways to raise concerns. She chose not to. Instead, she chose to recommend, no, advocate for actions that will all harm students' learning and achievement. Trustee Jacobson noted as a school board member that we have activist teachers teaching unauthorized lessons without providing any proof. Trustee Jacobson indicated as a school board member that she lacks confidence in public schools. In general, she advocated for school choice initiatives, which divert resources from all students. Specifically, she implied that she lacks confidence in our public schools when she indicated that she may not enroll even her own children in the schools which she governs. These statements and actions are harmful to all district students. These actions do not represent good governance. These actions do not represent noble stewardship of the district and its community. Considering the CSBA guidelines and principles, these actions demonstrate conduct unbecoming of a trustee. Finally, and most importantly, this is not personal. Again, I respect Trustee Jacobson's right to free speech and free thought. My position regarding her actions would be no different with any other trustee involved. My goal in raising these concerns is simply to ensure that we all act as good stewards of this district. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Carlo.
Good evening, President Griffin and members of the board. It's good to see you all again. I'll quickly mention a few things about the collective bargaining process. On your agenda tonight, you'll see that we have shared our collective bargaining proposal with the district, and the district has shared their proposal with us. I will simply say we look forward to a productive bargaining season with the district. I've been on the bargaining team for 18 years. I've been the chair of the team for 12 years. It seems like a really long time. Dr. Black and I have spent a lot of time together in rooms, and I have found the district consistently to be respectful, cordial, and we disagree about a lot, but I think we disagree respectfully, and I look forward to working with the district again. That's not why I'm here tonight, though. I have worked for the district for 25 years, and both of my daughters are currently students at Aragon High School, where I'm also a teacher. When Trustee Jacobson spoke at the California Forum on Ethnic Studies on February 25th, my first reaction to her words were frustration and anger that she would, as a school board member, encourage members of the public to sue her district, my daughter's district, and potentially drain its resources. It felt like a personal attack on the work that we do here. However, I've had some time to think about Ms. Jacobson's comments, and I've tried to understand them as a statement of one person's limited perspective of one thing that we do in this district, because that's what it is, one perspective, an important perspective. But I would like to offer 3 other perspectives on the subject matter that Ms. Jacobson spoke of, with the hopes that hearing these perspectives helps all of us understand the issue more clearly. First, I want to share the perspective of my daughters. I understand that Ms. Jacobson's child did not have a good experience in their ethnic studies class, from what your comments said. Both of my daughters took ethnic studies at Aragon High School. When I asked them what they thought of the course, they gave me a very prototypical adolescent answer. They said, it was fine. And so when I probed a little bit further and pushed a little bit more, they said they learned about people from different backgrounds and their experiences and struggles. The course helped my daughters understand not only the challenges of many groups in our country, but the roles my daughters could play in addressing some of those challenges and the effects of those challenges. But more than anything, my daughters said the course helped them understand themselves and helped them put the world around them in context. I asked them specifically a question that they responded to, which was that they never felt targeted, belittled, judged, or dismissed because of their background. They said they felt valued throughout the course. The second perspective I'd like to offer is that of a colleague. Ms. Jacobson said that when the ethnic studies presentation was given to the board, it felt like a sales pitch. All of the teachers giving that presentation to the board are my colleagues, and many of them are among my closest friends. And you should know that they were terrified before they had to give that presentation. Their work had been attacked, especially by people who have no connection to the district, and they had suffered personal attacks on their intelligence, their integrity, and their honesty, and it was questioned with no basis. This sales pitch consisted of an explanation of the ethnic studies curriculum and the artifacts shared were a student work. The board requested to see the work of the class, and that is what it was presented. To dismiss it as a sales pitch further diminishes and minimizes the hard work of my colleagues and friends. As a brief addendum to this point, and I apologize for bringing up Dr. Kempke in this situation, I saw the pain and exhaustion of my 4 colleagues who teach ethnic studies at Aragon when they received an email from Dr. Kemke saying that due to the kind of public records requests that Ms. Jacobson has encouraged, they will now need to go through the last 3 years of their lesson plans, syllabi, assessments, supplementary materials, digital resources, and teacher developed materials, and figure out the most efficient way to share them all and make them understandable to a third party that seems to have bottomless resources that a school district can only dream of. So on behalf of those colleagues, I have to tell you the immense waste of time and resources that you're encouraging. Surely you would agree there are better things for teachers and administrators to do in this district with their time. Finally, just a personal teacher perspective. I have been a social studies teacher in this district for 25 years. I've been on the Social Studies Council as a department chair for 21 years. This means I've taught over 125 year-long courses. I've taught over 4,000 students in this district. I've been to over 100 Social Studies Council meetings. I've been to over 70 district-wide professional development days. I've run and attended countless school meetings, department meetings, professional learning community meetings. I have been in a lot of meetings, and I really, really like talking to people. I really like engaging with people. In all of those meetings, in all of my time as an educator, I have never, ever been asked or encouraged to advocate pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian stances in any of my classes. I have never been asked or encouraged to make students feel bad about themselves based on their background. I have never been asked or encouraged to ask students to dislike or disrespect their country or any country. I have never been asked or encouraged to espouse any political or ideological beliefs. I have never been asked or encouraged to turn any of my students into activists. I have never been asked or encouraged to teach the grad level concepts of critical race theory. In fact, that phrase has never come up in any of my professional experiences. The only time it has come up is in lunchrooms where teachers joke about not knowing anything about critical race theory, even though certain media outlets accuse us of teaching it. I've never been asked or encouraged to limit or silence dissenting views. In fact, I have frequently and often been encouraged and taught how to incorporate as much student voice as possible into my classes and to provide opportunities for civil discourse. I've never been asked any of these things, and I promise you, if you know me, you know this already. If I have been asked to do any of these things, I would be here complaining about it. In 25 years, I've only been asked and encouraged to treat each of my students as individuals who deserve care, attention, and the best possible educational experience. I hope that these 3 perspectives are useful and help advance this conversation to a meaningful place. And I wasn't lying when I said I like talking. I'm glad to talk to any one of you about any of these topics, any member of the community, any member of the administration, any member of the board, any of my colleagues. I'm always open to talk about these issues because they're deeply important to me. This is my life's work. I appreciate the board's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of CSEA Chapter 519 representative.
Take a deep breath.
Good evening.
Hello, my name's Dale Brewer. I'm the CSEA president. I'm an electrician, not a public speaker, so please bear with me. I wrote it down. I'm going to fumble it, but let's have some fun here. Okay. Good evening, board members, student board members, and district officials. Again, I'm Dale Brewer, CSEA. I'm here to speak tonight on behalf of our 500 members. I'm proud again to remind you that as this storm passes through our district, CSEA has been assessing the power issues, internet issues, water damage, and countless other weather-related occurrences, all to provide our students, staff, and administrators a safe learning environment. CSEA does that. We are the ones the district counts on when things go wrong, when something needs fixing or cleaning. But we are also the ones that keep everything running smoothly day to day. CSEA does that. In the classrooms, we're the ones that work hand in hand with students to provide a smile, a safe place to talk. We're allies and we're advocates. CSEA does that. We keep the district and its programs running financially. We perform duties that from budgets to supplies, attendance to payroll. We keep our student athletes safe, be it on the bus or on the field. That's what CSEA does. We serve transfer students from all 7 high schools and student services to enroll them in GED, high school diploma, or ESL programs. And we serve a large population of parents that actually go to our adult schools of these students. That's what CSEA does. Like our student population, we are a very diverse group as well. We identify as Latino, white, Black, Pacific Islander, gay, straight, Christian, Muslim, just to name a few. And with all of our diversity, we leave space for one another to not be judgmental, but to be curious about each other. CSEA does that. I want to thank you for your time. God bless you.
Thank you. Report of the San Mateo Adult School Teachers Association.
They won't have a report due to the change in the evening tonight.
Okay. Report of the Student Board Representatives. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Reese. I'm actually filling in today for Libby, who's feeling under the weather. Anyways, I'm from Mills High School. I'm just happy to be here today to step in and be with Emily.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily and I go to Aragon High School. Some updates from our school. Just last week, we welcomed dozens of presenters for our career day on March 7th. It was a really amazing event. We were super grateful for our CTE and career coordinator, Miss Queenie Hua, the Aragon PTSO, and the Career Day Parents Committee for organizing this awesome event, which included presenters who were Olympic athletes and FBI agents. And it was just an incredible opportunity to speak with people who had careers that students were interested in pursuing. And additionally, a DECA member placed first in financial consulting at the DECA State Conference, qualifying him for the DECA International Conference, which will take place in Orlando, Florida in April. We wish him the best of luck. And finally, our theater program will be presenting Much Ado About Nothing at the end of next week.
Yeah, as for Mills, we are in the middle of our March Madness tournament, which has been great to see all the students from their fourth period play, as well as against a faculty team. So seeing all the teachers and admin play has been very fun as well. And on the topic of basketball, our girls basketball team recently won CCS, which was really exciting because they were runner-up last year in 2024, and they had won in 2023. So it was nice to get that redemption. And similarly, on April 28th, we also had some students compete, but not at DECA, at FCCLA. And we had, at the State Leadership Conference, we had Katie Lee, Sue Ann Lin, Ali Mann, Sophie Homan, Jessica Lee, and Heidi Liu all win first place in their star events. So congrats to them. And we have also, we have a interim assistant principal, Fred Wolfgram, who has been great to get to know, very nice guy. And I got to see him dance and kind of have fun at our winter formal. So that was really great. And he was enjoying all the music. So yeah, and last but not least, we're also putting on our drama, our production of Mamma Mia that Mr. Huddleston is being a part of. So that'll be next weekend. Yeah.
We got tickets.
Oh, let's go.
I hope Dr. Jones, Aragon's principal, also dances at our next dance coming up. That would be great.
Subtle hit to the board.
We also, Aragon students also have some more exciting news to share on the topic of college admissions. While a lot of results are still on their way, specifically, for example, the UCs, many haven't been released yet. So far, students have been accepted to schools including UC Berkeley, the Savannah College of Art and Design, Claremont McKenna College, and the University of Colorado Boulder. Congrats to all of our wonderful students at Aragon. And of course, we're also super excited to support all of our students who will be entering the workforce directly, attending trade school, taking a gap year, joining the military, or choosing any other plans for their next journey after high school.
Yeah, as for Mills, I can also share a more personal perspective as I am a senior. This process has been super overwhelming, but it's great to finally see the results of all the hard work everyone has been putting in. So as March is flying by, as she was saying, the UC decisions are coming out each week, and there's been a lot to celebrate. And I will say personally, I have noticed that some peers have been facing like unexpected wait lists, even at schools with relatively high acceptance rates. But yeah, like I said, we're still waiting. I think most are set to come out next week or in 2 weeks. Personally, I have gotten into UC Berkeley, which is really exciting. And I got to do an overnight program there, and yeah, it was just a really great opportunity. And so yeah, looking forward to the next few weeks, nervous, but also exciting for the next 4 years. And yeah, also our College and Career Center and school counselors have been invaluable. And we're also doing a workshop on Voices of Valhalla Career Speaker Series. And this week we're having some professionals from trades and public service. So definitely being supported from the school, no matter what path we're looking for after graduation. So yeah.
And as for the events going on with the Student Board Council, at our next meeting, we're excited to welcome Dr. Julia Kemke. She'll be coming to seek some student input about the instructional framework. We're excited to share our opinions and ideas and collaborate with her.
And student board council members were asked to contribute or suggest edits to the 4 upcoming proclamations, which are the Cesar Chavez Day, National Arab American Heritage Month, Autism Awareness Month, and Adult Education Week. And yeah, these 4 will be coming to the board for approval at the March 27th board meeting.
And one final word from us, we wanted to help promote an event that was first mentioned to us by Mr. Huddleston. Pride Prom will be happening on April 18th at the College of San Mateo. It'll be a fun night for students to take a break from academics and extracurriculars and all the other stresses in their lives and enjoy the night with friends and also meet new students within our district. We know, especially in light of recent events, those of the LGBTQ plus community may feel hesitant to fully express themselves. So we hope that this event allows them to celebrate their identities and just have a blast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was well rehearsed.
Yes.
It was very informative. Thank you. And Reese, you picked up speed as you were going there. You're kind of getting with the program. Emily's just like,
She's fitting right in.
yeah, welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, governing board comments, Trustee Chavez.
Thank you, President Griffin. I'll make this brief. I was going to talk about the Aragon High School ribbon cutting ceremony with Superintendent Booker already touched upon that. I wanted to thank everybody who came out, including our former trustee, Linda Lees Dwyers was there, which was amazing, as well as some of our other folks in the neighborhood here. Councilmember Lisa Diaz-Nash was there. And of course, all the couple students that spoke and also Greystone West and BHM Construction and Carducci Associates. So it was a great event. And of course, I want to thank Trustee Lihi Andrade Zuniga and Trustee Jennifer Jacobson for attending. And I would be amiss to not thank our amazing Laura Chalkley, who put everything together, and also our facilities folks, right, who put everything together. It was just amazing. And I also wanted to touch upon something that was already mentioned about the storm. Okay, I'm not a weather person, I'm not a meteorologist, but I was just watching the news last night, and I was glued to watching the 2 different news channels to watch the news just for the weather. 3 storms coming in back to back. And I know we have amazing staff. So thank you to CSEA and everybody involved in keeping our schools safe. So I want to give a shout out to that. And one more thing is there's a lot of our feeder elementary school districts have outdoor ed. And people put pictures on Facebook. It's great because I remember when my kids were in 5th grade. It's really exciting. And they have a video of the bus driving away. And of course, I see San Mateo Union High School District on the bus. And I know that's, again, our amazing CSA staff. So I want to thank staff for always being out there in our community serving. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Jacobson.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I did attend the Aragon High School baseball field ribbon cutting, which was a wonderful day with sunny weather, unlike today. I also have been enjoying attending the girls lacrosse games. My daughter plays for Hillsdale. And tomorrow I look forward to open house at Hillsdale High School. I also want to thank Mr. Childress and Mr. Cordy for their comments that shed light on their perspectives and experiences. And I just want to reassure this community that my intent is not and never has been to encourage actions that would drain district resources or harm students, as has been suggested. Rather, I want to ensure that all board policies are being followed, as is my duty. I invite those who question my intent to look at my collective record since being on the board, at the actions I've taken and the words I've spoken in this role to uphold the district mission and values, and not judge me based on some comments I made to an audience that extended beyond this district. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. I have invited Mr. Childress, and I would invite Mr. Cordy to have dialogue outside the boardroom so that we can have a free exchange of ideas. And I look forward to learning more from you. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Land.
So originally I was just going to pass, but I'm getting a little philosophical right now. I've been on this board for quite a few years, and I've been on a board for over 20 years in education. My whole career has been connected with education. And I must say that I know that education is an imperfect institution. It's a human institution. And, you know, there's going to be divergent opinions. There's going to be varying degrees of which way should we go? What are we going to get into? But what struck me really important tonight was the fact that when we said goodbye to two of our trustees, Linda Lees Dwyer and Peter Hanley, it reminded me of the honor that we had of disagreeing. I mean, Peter and I disagreed so many times on different things on this board. The same with Linda. One time, just to I'm trying to remind myself, one time we disagreed so adamantly, we were Linda and I were actually almost yelling at each other. And then it was like, are you giving me a ride home? Yeah, okay, let's go. You know, I mean, and I guess my hope is, I know the world is changing. It's a very, very polarized world right now. And for many years, I felt like this board was insulated from that problem. And I'm hoping, and I'm really inspired by what Trustee Jacobson just said, which is like, let's have this open dialogue and talk and bring these two groups together just to have that conversation. I hope we can keep doing that. I'm hoping that this board can be as elevated as it once was, because there's so much that we can do. I'm so proud of this district. Just listening to the students, listening to the teachers, listening to us, you know, it's not perfect. We don't have to vote on everything the same. We don't have to agree on things. It can be one way or the other and whatever, but there has to be some honor and respect that needs to be part of this. And so I've been really trying to figure out how to get this across. And I was just inspired by everybody's words tonight. So I had to speak my mind on that. So that's it. So that's my philosophy today. I'm very proud to be part of this board, and I'm very proud of this district and all of the staff, teachers, employees. And I just want to say great leadership as well. So thank you, and the board. Thank you.
Boy, between summer's almost here and your eloquent words, I'm ready to adjourn this meeting. But anyway, unfortunately, we got an agenda we got to slog through. So Trustee Andrade Zuniga.
Yes, thank you so much. I also attended the Aragon baseball field ribbon cutting. It just like whenever I go to the different fields, it just reminds me of when my kids were playing. I'm glad that they've grown up and are out of the house now to be able to do this work here in the district, because it helps me to think more clearly about all of the different students we have here and everybody's needs. I think, and just in my experience, we had a great experience here, but you know, we sometimes focus a lot on ourselves. And so I want to make sure that I'm able to have clarity and look at all of the parts of the district. I also just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Chalkley and to our facilities people, just all of our staff that was involved in making that happen. When Measure L, when that measure came out, I was serving on the PTSO at Hillsdale, And I remember Dr. Skelly, and there was someone else that came with him. I can't remember. Another member of the Measure L committee. Our PTSO was very instrumental in getting folks to vote for it and to sign the petition to put it on the ballot. And I remember just, it was like, it felt so far away. And now here we are. We have our fields almost finished, and we have so many things to be grateful for, including our community that had rallied around this measure. You know, people sometimes criticize the amount of money that school districts spend on things like that, and but it just improves not only the aesthetics of the school, but also just the heart. I think it really does show that we care about our students and about the community. It's really nice to see. So thank you. I also wanted to just talk about I think the situation that, you know, we've been experiencing lately with just different opinions and things that are said and unsaid and all of that. I too, when I joined the board, I saw a very cohesive board. I too didn't agree with everything, but it was really interesting, the dynamics of how we disagreed. I remember when we were raising the pride flag, and we I remember being really mad at Trustee Griffin and Trustee Hanley, and you know, Trustee Dwyer and Trustee Land and I, we were arguing, and you know, we were all kind of going back and forth. But at the end of the day, the students spoke. And when the students said that it was important to them and why, it really made a difference in what the vote was. And that's how I see what we're teaching. When our students come to us and say how it's changed their lives, how it's encouraged them. I mean, we have two amazing school board representatives here that are students. I mean, these two people here are an example of what our district produces. What we cultivate, what we support, you know, what we mold. And I'm very proud of that. So I just want to leave it there. Thank you.
Boy, you know, I moved I didn't move anything. The comments were moved up to the front so we could just speed through this meeting. We all are suffering from deprivation of sleep and everything else. I'm going to make my comments as quick and as I can. You know, the strength and effectiveness of our governing board lies in our unwavering commitment to the district's core mission. And I did cut and paste this, lest you guys think, where'd this come from? It sounds familiar, which is to challenge and motivate each student to achieve their full potential as a responsible member of our diverse community in a safe learning environment that promotes intellectual growth, health, creativity, and respect for self and others. Now I'm back on me. I believe that it is essential that the board remain focused on advancing the mission, ensuring our decisions align with the long-term goals of the district and the greater good of the district and all of its students. While diverse perspectives and discussions are valuable, allowing a single issue, whatever the issue is, to dominate can detract from the broader purpose and hinder our progress on achieving goals in this district. By prioritizing the mission, the board can foster unity, uphold its fiduciary responsibility, and faithfully serve its stakeholders with integrity and purpose. So forgive me if I sound preachy. You know, my years on this board are waning. So I'm the old guy and I'm ready to, you know, let's get on with it. So I appreciate the indulgence on everybody's part. So thank you. Now we have a public comment. Justin Sell. Welcome.
been a student and a student teacher in this district, and I'm proud to still serve this wonderful community as a swim coach and middle school history teacher. I'm here to speak in defense of full and accurate history curriculum in support of other public educators against those who have attacked them and encouraged others to do so. As proposed, Assembly Bill 1468 threatens to gut ethnic studies, restricting curriculum to, quote, the domestic experience of historically marginalized people in America, end quote. This bill would undermine public education and restrict students' view of history to a pale and incomplete picture. Unfortunately, Trustee Jacobson has expressed the same desires. Her lies about ethnic studies and history teachers are unworthy of the position she holds. The ebbs and flows of history have never been subject to the lines we draw on maps. My experience growing up Cuban American in the United States is fundamentally tied up in the events of the Cuban Revolution and preceding centuries of Spanish colonization, just as the lives of many Vietnamese and Korean Americans are influenced, not defined by, but influenced by the history of the Vietnam War, Korean War, and preceding French or Japanese colonization. Neither can knowledge of the Holocaust ever be divorced from discussions of what it means to be part of the Jewish diaspora in America or any other nation. All history is world history, and as I tell my students, if you aren't thinking historically, you're not thinking critically. The Iron Curtain divided nations to prevent the spread of critical thought, honest discourse, and ideological diversity. AB 1468 and the other fraudulent attacks on ethnic studies from Trustee Jacobson and others at last month's forum pursue the same aim: to build up national walls in the heads and hearts of our students against any possibility of a difficult truth, challenging conversation, or recognition that just maybe we're all people, all with something in common, all with something to contribute to our common education. My family fought in the Confederate Army. I've seen the legal records with which they traded human beings, including children, like they were nothing but farm equipment. Yet I am not overwhelmed with an inalienable guilt or paralyzing shame at the circumstances of how I came to be. Yes, the moral arc of the universe is long, sometimes not even perceptible, but it does bend towards justice. So when I learn and think and teach about the sins of the past, I find myself overwhelmed by how far humanity has come, overwhelmed with reverence and gratitude for all the heroes all over the world who together forced that arc to bend a little closer to justice. That's what ethnic studies and history are really all about. If you shut your ears to everything else I said, please remember this: your kids are stronger and much, much smarter than you give them credit for. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Are any more blue cards?
There are none.
Okay. Are any virtual comments online?
There are none.
Okay. That concludes the public comments. Communications to the board, item N1.
Yeah, we have, yes, we have a communication from the San Mateo County Office of Education. This is with regard to our first interim report, and it reads just very briefly. It's a long memo, but I'll just read a few sentences. The San Mateo County Office of Education has completed its review of San Mateo Union High School District first interim report for the 24-25 fiscal year pursuant to Ed Code 42130. They go on to say that the district has submitted a positive certification, which means the district has certified it will meet its financial obligations for the current fiscal year and subsequent 2 fiscal years, and that they agree with our assessment. So while it's just a few sentences, it's a tremendous amount of work by Mr. Hawkins and his entire business services team. So I just want to say how much I appreciate that. We are a very lucky district when we are not entertaining massive budget cuts right now, or layoffs or any of those kinds of things. And I was starkly reminded of that at the conference I was just at. So I'm grateful for the work of our teams, the community support that we have, the fiscal responsibility that the board takes on, and how we all pay attention to the budget. The budget is a reflection of our priorities, and the fact that we have a positive certification shows how seriously we take it. Thank you. Microphone, sir. There you go.
Boy, it came on by itself, and I don't have to hit it anymore.
It's back there.
Forgive me. Item O, recognitions. Are there any recognitions?
Not this evening.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. We are moving on to the consent agenda. Do any of the trustees wish to pull an item from consent for discussion?
If there are no items to pull, I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a
Thank you.
motion and a second. Any discussion? Is there any comment on this item?
There are none.
I have just a quick comment.
Yes.
Just as a reminder, I want to circle back that the board requested that we continue to work with the Student Board Council on the Women's History Day proclamation. I may have the title of that a little wrong.
That's
Sorry.
right.
The resolution.
The
Yeah,
res-
the
yeah.
resolution.
And we are doing that. We are working on it, and we should have an updated version at our next board meeting. So I didn't want
Thank
you
you.
to think we forgot
Thank
about that.
you.
Yep.
Before the end of the month.
Before the end of the month.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let me see. Student, yeah, I gotta read to get to this is the student reps. How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I have to turn a lot of pages to figure out, yeah.
Mhm.
You're doing great.
Special reports and appearances, Superintendent Booker.
Thank you very much. So tonight, I'm really pleased to welcome my colleagues who are presenting. I don't know if Dr. Kempe, if you want to introduce this, but this is the Student, Family, and Staff Panorama Survey, Culture and Climate. And before you do introduce it, let me just say how encouraged I am about the incremental progress that we're making. It absolutely is noticed. I think it speaks to the work that our principals and educators are doing at our school sites. And anytime that you see, I'm a big believer in this, anytime that you see incremental progress in education, it's something to absolutely celebrate. Progress in education is often slow, challenging, because we have a turnover of students, we have a turnover of educators, turnover of community members. So anytime we see progress, it's something to celebrate. So with that, Dr. Kemke.
As a introduction, I guess I just want to mention that the Panorama Survey is the results that we're going to look at tonight. We've been actually giving this survey for almost 5 years now. So you do see some longitudinal data, which is really helpful. And as Superintendent Booker mentioned, to see some of the incremental growth in some of the areas is really heartening. There's also some new data points that Mr. Simmons is going to speak to. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Director Simmons to go through the student results for Panorama.
Thanks, Dr. Kemke. Good evening, President Griffin, board members. There's quite a few slides. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all of them, just to let you know up front. I'm here tonight to do this quick review of the survey results. So this winter survey focused on issues of climate and culture, as well as student engagement, was administered from January 21st to February 27th, as indicated there. This slide gives you a sort of participation breakdown by school. While we saw a couple of sites with lower than hoped participation, we were working with those sites on kind of future years ways of improving. I mean, I think in general, most school sites are seeing pretty good engagement with the survey. And again, this is our second survey of the year, so that may have some impact sometimes on student participation. It should be noted here that the Bridge Academy is not included in this overview, as that program administers a shorter Spanish survey 3 times at the beginning of each trimester, and so we'll be reviewing those results at the DLAC presentation later this spring to give you a sense of how students at the Bridge program, at the Bridge Academy are doing. Okay. Meanwhile, this slide just gives you a breakdown of sort of the representation. We want to make sure that our survey is sort of relatively proportional to the student population in the district. And so in general, those demographics, if you will, generally mimic the district representation. I would say Latino students are a little light. They're more like 40% of the student population. So we're a little light in a couple of areas, but in general, it's pretty representative of of the demographic groups across the district. And as you can see, our ninth graders seem to be the, the best respondents of the survey. So, kudos to the ninth graders. But anyway, and I should say there actually are more seniors than there are of any other student group. So in fact, the seniors were a little light relative to their population. Seniors. No, just kidding. So I want to just sort of start by just doing a broad overview of some of the big takeaways, I think, from the survey. And certainly I'm happy to answer questions once we get toward the end here. In the area of improved school climate and inclusivity, we really see some, as Dr. Kemke and Mr. Booker said, the data shows some real positive movement toward a more respectful and inclusive school environment. We see a 2% rise in students reporting that peers treat people from different races, ethnicities, or cultures with respect. A 1% increase in students feeling adults treat diverse backgrounds fairly. Encouragingly, 76% of students feel comfortable expressing views on controversial topics in class. And again, we're going to get into that new one in some specific detail in that new area of the survey that was prompted by a board member at the end of the presentation. While there's progress is evident, continued efforts are needed to ensure that all students feel safe and respected in our school settings. And I think you see some of that data in the details. I will say one of the things I didn't talk about earlier here, in this last group of students, the confidentiality is protected. There's sort of groupings of African American, Native American, or students who don't actually have a race in our student information system. That's principally African American students, I will just say, right? Because our number of Native American students is fewer than 10 in the district. So I would just say, like, that's actually a proxy for our African American student population. I would say that last category, when you see that group reported throughout the survey, that's who that really is. The numbers are not reported in specific groups because you'd actually be able to identify who they are if we actually put them in specific numbers. That's why they're protected that way. So, and I say that to just say that, we're going to see when you're seeing the African-American student experience, and I'm calling it out in particular because we're also going to talk in a few minutes about our work to support our African-American staff in the district, which we think is a direct connection to our African-American students. So anyway, the second area here is that we do see increased awareness and responsiveness to hate speech. It's really one of the most encouraging pieces of data, I think, in this year. Our awareness policies regarding bias, discrimination, and hate speech has increased significantly, 5 percentage points in 1 year, which was a significant improvement. And again, while I will not say there is correlation here, there definitely, not causation, I think there's real correlation to the work that our sites are doing on a variety of fronts to both raise awareness among students and then actually hold students accountable for things that they're saying on our campuses around hate speech. And that students are really noticing adult intervention. I think that's the key piece of the puzzle that you've been tracking as a board as one of our LCAP measures. And this growth really suggests that these initiatives around both policy awareness, because there's also a question in there about, are you aware of the school's policy? And that's on improvement, but also, ongoing education and training for staff and for students about these issues. We're also seeing some strengthening of teacher-student relationships. 92% of students feel their teachers are respectful. That's a really high number that continues to rise, right? So there's this sense that students really do feel that their teachers respect them across the board, across all demographic groups. However, only 72% of students report having at least one trusted adult on campus. And that's when we're really going to start tracking in particular, is that we want to make sure that certainly every student has like one go-to person on their campus. This was actually prompted by one of our principals this last fall to start asking this question. And so we're going to keep tracking that particular question because it seems like it's such a great marker of connectedness. And then, obviously we should continue to explore, mentoring opportunities. We have a pretty robust tier 2 program, which is one way we've sort of explicitly tried to connect students. But in some of our schools have an advisory program. So I think there are different ways we're trying to get at this question of connections to school and adults. We've made some progress in cultural awareness and conversations about race. We have confidence. Students report confidence in discussing race-related topics. That actually rose by 8 percentage points. More students feel their teachers are encouraging to learn about different cultures, up from 53% from last year. And these numbers really suggest a shift toward a more open, I think, inclusive curriculum and environment for students. But we've obviously got to continue to work and professional learning for teachers and support for students so they can continue to feel this inclusivity. I think our areas for growth are really continue to be engagement and belonging. It's a lagging indicator. When I get to this particular piece, I'm going to take a moment to focus on this, and I am going to say that, as I think I've said in years past, in general, high school students don't like high school. And so that will be borne out in some of the data that I think it's easy to put, it's important to put it in context that while our students are, we'd like them to be more engaged and connected to school, they're not unlike many of their counterparts in other places. And that's important context because it's easy to sort of say, oh my gosh, it's terrible. Unfortunately, it's not great anywhere. So I said that fairly bluntly there. So then inside the survey, so that was sort of a high overview of sort of the big takeaways, I think, from the survey, and you may have your own reflections when we get to the end here. I would say that this slide is really a summary of the data in that first section of the survey related to school culture and climate. These are sort of the four interrelated elements. There's about 4 or 5 questions in each one of those sort of areas: diversity, inclusion, hate motivated speech, et cetera. So then I'm going to move us ahead to sort of each of those chunks has kind of a longitudinal set of data that I wanted to take a minute to show you all. So the overall favorability in the area of hate motivated speech, this is the one I was talking about earlier. I mean, so if you remember, we kind of don't want to remember the beginning of this because this was the beginning of the pandemic. We were actually in the heart of the pandemic when we first administered this survey in the fall of 2020. And this gives you this longitudinal picture of how, students improved sense of how we're dealing with issues of hate motivated speech. So how in this specific question, when there are instances of hateful or dehumanizing speech at my school, I see adults respond in a way that makes me feel safe. We've got 3/4 of the students responding favorably to that. There are subsequent questions about homophobia and sexism also, and students similarly feel similar about those as well. And those are covered in the memo. With regard to cultural awareness and action, this really is related to these issues of how often students learn about and discuss and confront issues of race and ethnicity and culture in school. And in general, we see an uptick this year that puts us sort of back to where we were in 2022. But in general, we're seeing, generally good favorability in this area overall. So then I'll move us into sort of the, connectedness, belonging elements of the survey. And this really gives you a sense of the sort of subcategories inside that broad area that I described earlier. And in general, you're seeing some of those trends, as I said, engagement, which was really about, how do you feel about going to class kind of questions. Those are still the lowest in our, so then we'll jump ahead. So in teacher-student relationships, we see this, this first area. And again, as I say, how strong are the social connections between teachers and students within and beyond the classroom? And again, you're seeing, so in the sense that like students feeling in general, like they have a connection, and they feel respected, as we saw in that previous slide. I think there is this connection overall, and that students feel they feel engaged with their classes. I think in general, what it is they don't like to go to class. That seems to be the specific spot. But again, I point out here on this slide that even though our 57% of our students have this relationship, as you see here in the panorama data set, our students are in the 80th percentile for suburban high schools, right? So while our students are not where we'd like them to be, they're relatively high in terms of their favorability in comparison to their other suburban counterparts. In terms of their sense of belonging, this one I felt really good about because we're seeing some improvement around this. And some of this we were worried, and maybe this is us beginning to see that because we started this whole thing during the pandemic, we were worried that maybe this was related to the pandemic, that because students felt very disconnected from a lot of things during the pandemic. And so I think that's one of the things that maybe is showing us that we're beginning to sort of hopefully come out of that fog. We don't have data from before the pandemic, so it's hard to know what it was like before, but we'll see. Hopefully we'll get back, we'll get to a new high going forward. With regard to engagement, this is the one that I was talking about before. And this is, again, an important data point here, right? So even though 27% of students, how attentive and invested are they in classes, we're at 27%. But again, it's in the 70th percentile for similarly demographic schools across the nation. And I will just quickly say that Panorama has about 1 million students in its data set. So there's a lot of students that are not all of them are in suburban high schools, but there's a very large group of students taking this assessment. So then I'm going to jump ahead to this last chunk, which is this final section was requested by a board member earlier this school year, and it's an area where we are generally also interested in hearing about from our students, and that's related to how inclusive and supportive our classrooms are for dialogue and discussion. And so you'll see here, sort of broadly speaking, and I lay this out in particular for this area because we've never had these questions before, but these are the 5 questions related that we asked in this area, and I'm going to go through each of them individually. But the first one is about how do you How often do you self-censor in your classes when you're having a discussion? And in general, we're seeing students generally have a positive, responding favorably in this area. And again, in general, across the demographic areas as well. Secondly, how comfortably would you feel expressing your views on a controversial topic during in-class discussion? Again, we're seeing mostly, 3/4 of the students feeling somewhat comfortable or more or better throughout the population of students. This one is related to how they feel expressing their opinions in the context of teacher or administrator pressure, right? And so this one only had at a 4-point scale. And so you essentially see 73% of students responding favorably. They don't feel like they're going to get any pressure from folks. And then this was about how much pressure they would get from their student colleagues around expressing their opinions in the class and getting pressure from their student counterparts. And again, 80% of them, more or less, 79% responded favorably in this area. And then the last one is related to whether or not students feel pressure to avoid conversations in classrooms, and the vast majority of students do not feel that pressure. I know you've had a chance to look at the memo, so I'm not going to go any more detail. I'm going to stop there and see if you have any questions.
Does the board have any questions, comments? Trustee Jacobson.
Yeah, so I really do appreciate the addition of these new questions this year on the topic of students' comfort in expressing themselves in class. And I did see a discrepancy in the way that it was reported in the memo versus the slides. So for all of the other questions, the standard in the survey is that the top 2 answers are favorable and the bottom 3 are not favorable. But with this set of questions, and that's how it was reported in the memo with this set of questions, but then in the slides, somebody changed it. And
Yeah, I did.
You did. So,
Yeah, so we've been going back and forth because again, these aren't questions that are given to us or set by Panorama. We created these questions. As we went back and forth with them and on our own internal team, we felt like when we looked at so if you look at the distribution of the questions, we felt like, see, we could debate whether occasionally or not. And again, we want to be transparent and say like the spread is the important question here, right? What is the spread of the data? So it's true. Like we decided to add the middle answer because it is actually the middle answer. If you look at some of our other questions, the middle answer is a favorable question, is a favorable response. So it's the middle question it's the middle answer that we did change to be, because we felt like occasionally wasn't enough of a it wasn't often or very often. It was, and again, I think the average, often people, when they respond to these kinds of Likert score questions, they pick the middle answer. If it's sort of the middling answer, it's not a big deal. So that was our thinking. But again, we're giving you the full spread, so I think it's important to look at the full spread.
it is, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to point that out to the audience because they probably haven't looked at the memo.
Sure.
And if you look at the memo, it says not 75% responded favorably, but it's like 30%.
And I apologize for that because we had made the change. We were working with the platform to get it changed, and it wasn't changed in time for the memo submission. So it's now in the actual platform. It's changed that way. The way that it's reported here.
Yeah. Thanks for that explanation.
There you go. Trustee Chavez.
Yeah, I want to thank you for the survey. The survey, putting together the survey and also presenting on the results. I want to thank you and staff for putting together the comparison to other high schools, because just like you said, I know the pages aren't numbered, but the overall favorability in this area over time, 27%. But then that's still, if you look at all high schools or the high schools that are included in Panorama, that's at 70%. So that puts it into context, because as you mentioned, high school students, some of them don't want to take a survey. I mean, I have 2 daughters, and I'm sure one took the survey in 2022 as a senior, and the other one didn't take it probably as a senior in 2024. That's just the way it is. And also the part about feeling comfortable speaking up. Again, every student is different. I know my 2 daughters were completely different. And what is, I'm gonna ask the student reps, excuse me, I think it's called Socratic seminar, right? Well, one of my daughters, I'm sure she did fine because she likes to talk. That apple didn't fall far from the tree. But my other daughter, I don't want to do Socratic seminar. And I would ask questions about it. And I pull data. I'm sorry, I worked with data all day. I would try to like probe for why don't you like that? What is it all about? Well, it's talking about your opinion. And Trustee Land would say this a few times, that no one here, we have a board that's not afraid to share their opinion, right? For all of us sitting here at the dais. But I just have, so every student is different, and some students just want to listen, or I don't want to say tune out, but just would rather listen than provide their opinion and speak up. So I just appreciate the slide deck, and just keeping in mind that everyone is different. But the Socratic seminar, that's where everybody in class, you're discussing your opinion and your viewpoint, and I mean, like an internal debate, sort of, right? Your opinion.
Yeah, so we have Socratic seminars, which are more of sort of assessment-based ones. Generally, that
Yeah.
will be at the culmination of a unit or perhaps a
right.
book that we've read. And so the discussion will be centered around topics that were discussed in that unit. And otherwise, we'll also generally have discussions about smaller things like a lesson or a chapter in a book. And I'd say that based on my experience, of course, I can't speak for how other students have perceived this, but based on my experience, my teachers and other students have generally been accepting
Nice.
of differing viewpoints. And I do feel personally, I like talking as well. I'm talking right now, and I do
Thank you.
enjoy it. So I think that I feel generally comfortable speaking how I feel, but
Yeah.
also I wanted to point out that sometimes the people's sort of concerns about speaking in a way that doesn't agree with others isn't
Yeah.
specifically because they're in a school setting. Sometimes just generally interacting with people on a
Sure.
day-to-day basis,
Totally makes
people
sense.
will be less willing to engage in that, or could sort of feel more hesitation about
Yeah.
creating that sort of
Yeah.
conflict.
Yeah, just piggybacking off of that. She kind of touched on a lot, but I do want to tell you guys I've done something called a micro lab. So as opposed to everyone speaking at once, I've sat with a table of 4, and each person gets a minute to speak uninterrupted. And when the next person speaks, you don't comment on what they say, you kind of just say what you have to say. So I've done this on books
Nice.
or on like poetry you read. So you each get a uninterrupted minute, and your group mates just kind of sit there and write down what you have to say. And I feel like for me, that has really allowed me to like absorb what people have to say, as opposed to I also like to talk, which is partially why I'm here. So, really making space for other people instead of always putting in like your 2 cents and needing to like ask questions or add your opinion. It was really great to like sit back and absorb someone's opinion. So those
Yeah.
are definitely great too.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here, for being our student board reps, and thank you for speaking up now. Thank you for your presentation.
Can
Thank
I
you.
mention something?
Any other comments?
I do.
Trustee Andrade.
Thank you. I really appreciate what the students just said, because a lot of this information we dissect really thoroughly in the Equity Advisory Committee. And all of these questions, we have to really think about different scenarios within the question. And so although, the metrics are the data that we see here, but there are some things that are just not quantifiable. And so in terms of like anecdotal information or things like that. And so it's really interesting in that committee, the type of questions that we do ask, and the differences in opinion in that group, because it does get to really dissect what these percentages mean. So I appreciate that. And it made me think about that with the students. Thank you.
Trustee Land.
So, first of all, I'm going to just repeat, thank you. Great report. I'm glad that we had the extra questions. I know we've talked about them in the equity committee. I know we were talking about adding things on, and I'm glad we did that. I'm going to I'd like to talk a little bit about the data, because again, should be data informed instruction. So let's look at the data. I love that we're having trends that are heading upward for the most part, and I think that's great. I really do believe that connectedness and belonging are critical. Comparing what happened pre-COVID and what happened during COVID, and the lack of connections that students have. I mean, that is something I think is critical, but I do see that we're improving and we're getting higher, which is great, means we're heading in the right direction. I think the one takeaway from this whole thing is about engagement.
Yeah.
I think if we really look at the 27%, yes, it's heading in the right direction, barely. 27%, and I think it's not an indication, or it's not about just us, but about school in general and how we need to rethink school sometimes. And I think we need to be disruptive. And it's a suggestion that I'm trying to make, and we've talked about before about how do we learn, how do students learn, how can we try? And I do believe that teachers are trying. I mean, just the two examples that we talked about with micro lessons and Socratic method, seminars. Yeah, well, Socrates is pretty old, but I mean, but I mean, trying new things and trying to engage students in different ways. I see teachers trying it all the time. I just think this is something that we have to really focus on in curriculum and instruction. And so I know I'm emphasizing this over and over again, but I'm really trying to make the point that engagement is critical to learning. And this is something that we have to keep just asking ourselves, how do we change? What do we do? What do we try new? And I'm not sure that anybody has the answers, because again, this is indicative of the nation and the panoramic, right? This is nothing new. We're not extremely low compared to everybody else. This is indicative of all students, right? I just need to hear that, because
I would just quickly contribute that I was just happened to be working with some of our instructional lead teachers today. We've solicited exemplary lessons that reflect the 5 principles of the framework. And every one of the 5, they're hitting on all 5 of the principles in all the subjects. One of them was about, I don't know, it was some crazy biological term. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, the point being that the lesson descriptions that we got just in these sort of overview descriptions were the kinds of things you're talking about. And I happened to be in a focus group early this week, and students at Aragon, and students were saying the same exact thing about, I'm most engaged when I'm doing things, when I'm up and I'm participating in activities or discussions. So I think absolutely our teachers are doing it, and we're trying to capture as many of those exemplars as we can, align to our framework. So it's also not untethered to something important to us, so our values. So do know that that work is underway to try to give people more and more tools and ideas for how to actually do the kinds of things you're talking about.
And you touched on some of the examples that I was wanting to hear in the focus group. So that was my next thing. It was like, we should focus on focus groups to really talk about what the engagement could look like to really improve engagement. You're already doing it.
No, it's great. Yeah, our equity visits have that as part of the protocol.
Right.
We're hearing from students about that. So
anyway, thank you.
Well, it will be really interesting to hear how the bridge program, how their answers look with this survey. So I'm excited to hear about that.
yeah,
Don't they have a different survey, or is
they have a different survey, but it does get to their general experience about how do you feel connected? Do you feel engaged in the work you're doing? So yes, we ask it in a little more simplified form, but yeah.
I have a question. How can we increase the participation rates at Peninsula and get CAP up? I'm particularly Peninsula, because I want to see, make sure that voices are heard, that they feel like they do have a stake and it's important.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've talked with Mr. Campana, and I think we're continuing to work on that. I think they're trying to incentivize it with like food and some other things. I think the one key thing that's happening it's really about attendance, to be honest. Like that's really the big divider, and that students are just challenged by attendance there. So getting kids to school and then getting them to do the survey, like that's been the challenge. Like, are you here on the day we administer? So having a bigger window, I think, is one piece of it from Peninsula. Like having it really, maybe have their window be 4 weeks, so they have more time to capture kids when they capture them. Yeah, so I think we're still struggling. I think that CAP had they had some hiccup that happened. This is the lowest that they've ever had. So I think they just had a particular hiccup this year because they're doing it during their homeroom time. And this is not like, hey, students, here's an email, please do this survey. Students here will probably tell you they do it in a space where they're sort of told to do it. They don't have much of a choice. So we really do. That's how we've gotten these levels. If we were just asking students like any of us to do a survey, we would, whatever, we would do it or not. Yes. So we kind of used our captive audience spaces to do it. But in general, I would say, and that's been a pretty effective approach, but I appreciate your point. And we'll keep talking about like how we can get those 2 particular places to increase their participation, because we really do need to hear from those students in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other question, and maybe it's not, it's on the progress in cultural awareness and conversations on race. That's low, although it's picking up. Those are really difficult conversations, and I started thinking about how how can we impact our message? You know, like in every class, walking in the halls, talking, I mean, how do we impact the attitudes? How
I mean,
do we,
well, I'll just quickly say that our intention strategy, which I'm going to actually say a couple more words about in a few minutes in the other presentation, is ethnic studies. We want to give kids common language to talk about these things in a way that's respectful, but also academic, right? We want to have students be thoughtful and not just pop off about whatever they think about whatever it is. And so we really want to ground students in a common experience. That is the purpose of that ethnic studies class in many ways, is this, right? So that as they get older, they've got this common vocabulary with which to have these kinds of, conversations that can be very difficult about experience or people feeling targeted in some way or other because of where they come from or what the color of their skin is. And so we really want to give students that ability, and that's at the heart of what ethnic studies is about. So I would say that's our approach, is to give students that common vocabulary, that common experience, and then draw on that as they go through their experience in high school.
boy, that's kind of difficult. I mean, just restricting, I hate to say that, it's difficult if we're only gonna, it's history maybe and ethnic studies, and the other five, I mean, I'm not, the other 5/6 of the day doesn't exist, not in my world.
Well, you should ask them if that's their
Well, I
experience.
am in a second here because I want to hear their comments. Well, one of the things that occurs to me, and I don't know if we do it on all campuses, I have to draw on my San Mateo experience. We have all these cultural festivals, Food Fest, with really good food that people really enjoy, and you can uplift all the members of the community, and they have stuff they can be proud of, and then you're kind of open. I mean, there's got to be more things that maybe we can do that are built into our daily lives at school.
Absolutely. I think we're all hearing that. I think, and I'm understating or underselling. I mean, I'm talking about the academic program of the schools, but
Yeah.
our schools have tremendous clubs, experiences and engagements. And on our sports teams, I mean, our sports teams are these amazing stews of kids who play, and get to know each other in really meaningful ways, right? So I think I think there's lots of ways. I was talking about, because your specific question was, seemed to me formal academic conversations about
Yeah,
race
I mean,
and
I didn't
ethnicity.
really, I mean, because
But-
I'm thinking, how does a teacher or an administrator impact somebody's views? I mean, and okay, yeah, there's the traditional classroom instruction, but the whole day seems like, well, there must be a lot of opportunities there, and that we're probably there that are happening, and maybe we're not conscious, or maybe we don't promote that stuff enough, or maybe we don't share ideas between campuses about, hey, we got this thing over here and it's great, so
Can I ask you a question, Trustee Griffin?
yeah.
Are you trying to say, I just want to make sure I understand, are you trying to say that you think it would be good if the students were consistently talking about issues of race, ethnicity, and culture in every subject throughout the day?
No, I was trying to figure out, it's a very small group that would talk about those issues, but I'm trying to figure out, how do we impact the students? How do we, the campuses impact the students so they can feel free to talk about race issues without feeling like a fight's going to break out?
Maybe less talk is better. I'm just putting it out there rather than more talk about. I mean, I think people have a lot of aspects of their identity beyond just skin color and race that people can connect over.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
No, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I guess my 60-year-old experience happened to be everybody could hang out, and you had your own identity, but it was like you also could talk about things like the Buddhist church and the people worshiping on Claremont Street when I was a Baptist living a few houses from the Buddhist church.
Mm-hmm.
We also had people whose parents had been involved in World War II on both sides. And we dealt with that without animosity and bad feelings. So I mean, I don't have the answers. I'm just searching, can we do a better job? Because those percentages are low. But race is a fact of life, and differences are a fact of life. Student board members, help me.
They're contemplating.
help me too.
They're thinking.
I actually can speak to something outside of classroom experiences as you're talking about culture clubs and celebrating identity. We're actually doing it's called Who We Are Assembly. It used to previously name, I think it was just a cultural assembly or international. And we moved from that language because we're giving various groups the opportunity to perform. Personally, I'm half Filipino, so my club, we do a traditional dance called tinikling with bamboo sticks. So that's a really great opportunity because we all have like an assembly type deal where we all sit in the theater and watch a different like fun dance or singing performance. And like I said, not restricted to cultural clubs. I believe they invite, as well as our Gender Sexuality Alliance, and just give various groups the opportunity to showcase something that is meaningful to them. And as someone in the audience, which I haven't been, but from backstage at least, seeing all these other groups, you know, really, like I said, you just have appreciation. And I think, you know, seeing what other people are participating in forms, you know, builds empathy and stuff like that too. So I do think assemblies are a great way that at least we're doing at Mills, and I hope more campuses can do some kind of celebratory or like a showcase or something. It's very great. That's cool.
At Aragon, we don't have a specific assembly, but we do have a lot of clubs that center around different parts of identity. So of course we have clubs for different ethnic groups, or but also we have clubs that deal with, like Miss Jacobson said, different parts of our identities. So if we have shared hobbies or shared interests, then those are also ways that people can bond through clubs and express different parts of their identities, as well as we have a GSA club as well. And fun fact, our PE program actually does, I can't pronounce it right, but we do
Tinikling
as part of our PE program. So that's really fun. I enjoy it. It scares me a little bit, but overall, I do have a good time.
Can you
And
tell me what that is? I don't know what that is.
Just wear thick socks. That's all I'm going to say.
my shoe fell off once. I was doing
We actually introduced it into our PE curriculum last year, and I got to go in. But yeah, they're like bamboo sticks, and yeah, so it's like 1, 2, 3, and your feet go in, kind of similar to an
yeah.
agility ladder.
Yes, I've seen it.
1, 2,
Okay.
But yeah, we started doing it for PE last year, and like I got to come in since I was a junior last year, since I didn't have PE, and teach the underclassmen. People were scared, but it was very fun, and it was their final, and we got a lot more participation after because everyone did in PE and was like, "Wait, this is so cool! I want to try." So we have non-Filipino members that just like to dance too, and it's really great.
That's cool.
Reese and I will teach you guys next time. We'll bring it in. It'll be a board activity. All the
I'm down.
Let's do it.
I'm in.
All right.
Well, I've seen the dance many times performed, and I'm an observer. I think I'd probably fall down, but kudos to everybody who does that.
And sorry, if I could
Sorry. Oh, no, you first.
Sorry, if I could add one more thing about the way our clubs are structured at Aragon. A lot of them, they'll focus on specific cultures, but it's not restricted only to people of that culture. For example, we have it's X culture appreciation clubs. So we have say Korean or Japanese culture appreciation clubs. So if you really like anime or you really like K-pop, but even if you don't personally belong to that group, since you appreciate the culture, you are more than welcome to attend and learn more, or just drop in and have a chat. Even if you don't have to know everything, you don't need a specific background. Everyone's welcome to just come in and learn more.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say my club we're literally called the Filipino American Alliance. And as for many clubs, even if their wording isn't that way, like you said, you can just come in. And when we're making our mission and vision statements, especially in someone on the council, we're encouraged to refrain from using any restrictive language that is saying, oh, for people to celebrate their heritage. While it's also for that, we want everyone to learn about it and appreciate it as well. So yeah.
Trustee Land.
First of all, I think my my late mother-in-law would be so proud of this meeting. She's just talking about Tinickling. She's Filipina, and just it's her birthday today, so I'm just really kind of touched by this conversation. But to really talk about what we're saying is with this statistics and data, we're talking about all these clubs and how we're talking about identity. So we're trying to elevate everyone's individual identity, but at the same time, we also have to figure out how to stop the hate and stop the hate speech and things that are going on. And how do we bring us together? And how do we, and I love some of the conversations that I just heard from the students where it's like, it's not just X, it's X plus whoever wants to come in, this openness, this welcoming. And I think we have to celebrate that. The more we do that, the more we're going to understand that it's not just me versus you, it's us. And but me is different than you, and we have to appreciate those differences and honor those differences. And I don't think our history has done enough of that, and that really is the essence of this whole meeting in some way, from the very beginning to right now. So I'm hoping that we can take what we've just learned and talked about here and use this data to start really thinking about how can we make this better. Because again, while I see great statistics improving, we have a lot more to do. And that's just, and I see some bright spots when I hear the school board members, the student board members say stuff like this. And thank you for both sharing. So anyway, I think the data, again, I'm just going to reiterate, the engagement component is the most important piece that we need to really think about. It's just a reflective thing that we have to do as an institution, so we can get better. Thank you.
Boy, we had a conversation about diversity and everybody was smiling, and isn't that disappointing? The thing I would say in the future, we ought to make sure that we hear from the student, like incorporate them into this so we know more fully what's going on out there and not just the data on the report.
Yeah, I actually had that reflection myself when I was like, maybe we'll just actually collaborate with them and have them do the presentation. I'm not kidding. Next time, like, yeah.
What was also really interesting is hearing regardless of his comment, the gentleman that was here that was a new teacher or a student teacher. I mean, that's really interesting because things change and evolve. And so it's nice to hear their perspective as well, as like, well, this is how we're doing this now. And as opposed to how I learned it. It's just kind of interesting. Thank you.
A good report. I don't have any comments,
There are none.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Here we go.
Q2 anti-bias grant update.
Sorry. Yeah. I just want to welcome both of you back up here to give some feedback on how the grant is progressing, the activities that we're doing. I really appreciated last year's presentation. I thought it was superb. So take it away. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get us started. Board President Griffin, trustees, cabinet. I want to say Candace Thomas, who's the coordinator of this grant, she's unable to be with us tonight. She's not feeling well, so she otherwise she would have been here with us tonight. And she's been facilitating the work, so we're really just I'm playing her part tonight. So we're here tonight to provide you with an important update on our anti-bias grant. I'm going to do a little bit of framing here where this work fits into kind of and we did this on purpose, right? We situated this after the panorama survey results on purpose. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about where this work sits in our broader racial equity policy implementation and strategy work. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the grant specifically, and then some of the activities that we've been engaged in over the course of this year to enact the grant. So I just want to get us started by reminding us that this $200,000 grant, which we secured 2 summers ago, 2023, it was like an eon ago, it was secured in order to further our efforts to enact our equity mission and vision at its heart. This vision and mission, as you can remember, was approved by this board. It's crazy, 5 years ago now, I sort of looked at that date. I was like, oh my gosh, 5 years ago. Time flies when you're pandemicking. The particular focus of the grant is on making this a welcoming environment for BIPOC students, staff, and families, and ultimately that we eliminate opportunity gaps for our BIPOC students. That's sort of at the heart of in alignment with our equity vision and mission. I just want to get us started by reminding us all that, sorry, I just said that. This grant is part of this broader set of strategies, which I referred to a little bit in the previous presentation, that we as a district are undertaking to ultimately have schools that are humanizing spaces in support of all of our students, including those who have been historically underserved. The four broad strategies that we're kind of undertaking are certainly in many ways primarily for the instruction department, our new humanizing pedagogy instructional framework. That's at the heart of our work, right? But also our ethnic studies courses at the 9th and upper division levels are also central to this work to try to create a more inclusive and humanizing space for our students. Our work to counter dehumanizing language across our campuses is also central to this work. We have student equity councils, we have campaigns, and we're going to talk a little bit about those actually in this presentation. And some early, if I were to give you the data about individual school sites, there's a couple of schools that are seeing some particular improvements because of the efforts that they're making, we think. And then finally, the work that's going to be described tonight is really related to supporting BIPOC and specifically African American staff to strive in their respective roles throughout the district. And so this grant is really, it's this is quoted from the actual grant application itself. It's to provide direct support to Black and BIPOC educators through professional learning and networking opportunities to sustain them professionally. That's the goal, right, of this grant. It's a 3-year grant, in case I didn't say that. The intended outcome is to retain our African-American faculty. I was struck, one of the things that we're going to describe here in a few minutes was we were talking with Sam Johnson recently, a former superintendent of the district, and I was struck by the district's longstanding commitment to African-American, to reaching out to African-American staff. I did not know that he was actually recruited from Louisiana, and he had 50-something other offers. And because the district also happened to find his wife a job, he took the job in the late 60s. It was kind of amazing to me that the district had done that work even back then to do that kind of recruitment. I felt proud that day. And then lastly, the second piece is to make sure that we continue to attract African-American educators of all, in all our different roles throughout the district. We're gonna, it's really about this notion of, we talked a little bit about this last June. It's this notion of targeted universalism, right? Is kind of at the heart of this strategy for this grant. It's like, we want to kind of support this particular group of educators and staff in the district, because if we support them well, we will support all our staff better. That's kind of the idea, right? Of this idea of like, because someone might ask, well, why are you focusing only on African-American staff? We're not only, focusing on African-American staff as a district, but for this grant's purposes, we really want to understand and support our African-American staff's experience because there are so few of them in the district and so few students in the district. And we see lots of similarities in the survey data that we do of the two groups. We also want to create programming to disrupt and eliminate instances of hate speech and bias, and that's related to this because a lot of our African-American staff see and hear the same things all the students and our other staff see and hear on our campuses around, specifically the use of the N-word. And then lastly, we want to partner with an organization that's going to help us design some of the experiences to provide kind of high quality affinity support for our educators, kind of based on the needs. So that's sort of the grant itself. And then ultimately, the organization we're working with, the Black Teacher Project, led by Dr. Misha Mosley, they have this kind of 3-word sort of idea of affinity spaces that they're really about healing, education, and advocacy. Those are sort of the 3 sort of principles of this idea. So this is a picture of us all over at the Millbrae Library back in February, like the 25th, I think it was. You can see Dr. Johnson back there on the right. He's on the right in the back. Anyway, that was after he'd given us a talk on sort of his experience in the district, having been a teacher and an administrator, and ultimately the superintendent. And so we've had a variety of convenings this year, and you've gotten a little bit of updates on these in weeklies over the last few months. We had our first kind of event in the fall, and it was just a fun barbecue over at Coyote Point. Trustee Griffin was there for that day, and that's right, we had 2 trustees there that day. And so then on November the 7th, we had our first group meeting all of our convenings have been at the Millbrae Library. And that really was focused on kind of getting connected. And we had about 18 people there from across the different roles in the district. That's a pretty good, that picture there is a really nice representation because there are administrators in there are classified staff, there are adult school staff, there are folks from across the departments. It's a really nice kind of cross section of the district. It's still a relatively small proportion of the population. There are about 60 staff across the district, so we don't quite have everybody there. Sometimes because some of the folks can't actually attend when we have the day-long meetings, so we're trying to do some social activities as well. There's actually something coming up this Friday to do something in the early release on Friday. In January, we had our second group meeting. Again, we sort of began to get a little bit more organized that day to really start to think about what are the things we want to actually engage in. Dr. Rook's going to say a few things about like what those specific things are. And then we had and again, in some ways, I don't know, I think it said February 7th, but it was actually February 25th. But we had a social gathering. Sorry, not a social gathering. There was a Black History Month social gathering. I meant about that. Then there was the Affinity Group number 3 meeting. So we had like a meet and greet on the 7th, and then the actual this meeting that's in the picture here on February 25th. And the idea was that we really dug into some key issues in this third convening. And I'm going to hand it off to you to say a little bit about what we talked about. Oh, and we have a final meeting in May.
Oh, I was like, am I supposed to follow your notes? Okay. So what we have accomplished in this short amount of time, we've increased participation steadily after each meeting from November to February. And we've also networked out and said, hey, the group is here. Come join us if you would like. Definitely positive feedback from the participants and a sense of belonging. And at the end of our last meeting, it was just even to sit and fellowship and have community was really nice. 2 of the concerns for the advocacy and action that came up is, again, like Brian talked about, is discussing the workplace climate and the misuse of the N-word, and then still creating a sense of belonging amongst staff, Black staff, because of the survey. Ding. Thank you. So some of the things that came out of the meeting is, put it back. Sorry. All right, is we want to invest in having a pipeline for our teachers that are Black and having them be able to live in the communities and go from classified to certificated. We also wanted to talk about formalizing support for Black staff members, whether it's networking, mentorship, if there's a new member, the gift, and just making them feel welcome. They also talked about a roadmap to pursuing moving up into higher positions. How do you become an employee at the district professional level? And then creating pathways for coaches and subs, because a lot of our coaches happen to be Black men. And then connecting our graduates more intentionally to opportunities to work in the district. So one of the feedbacks too from the community was, excuse me, like I said, using the N-word, and looking at the data, we tried to look at it from school sites, and we still need to decipher that out a little bit better. And then looking at it, is there a difference between if a site has more Black staff or not? And then how are we documenting the inappropriate use of the N-word? And then just being transparent and consistent around accountability. So what we are asking is to continue to invest into the Black staff that you have here.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And so, I think one of the pieces that we wanted to, I think there's 2 actually schools here. So we have 2 schools that I did want to call out quickly. Aragon, and I took some photos because I happened to be there on Monday. I was like, oh my gosh, here are the posters I've heard about. And so they have this campaign going on. Maybe you've seen these posters. There's about 20, Carla, maybe about 20 students who volunteered to have their photos taken, and there are these sort of images of the students and sort of I think their actual phrases that the students say about their it's sort of things you'll hear about, oh, it's no big deal, it's not that, it's not that important, or it's not oh, I didn't mean it that way, that kind of stuff. And it's really, I think they're really provocative posters. They were created by staff, and so and then there was a classroom that I happened to be in that has this, clearly it was like some kind of activity where the students were asked to just kind of name what they feel when they encounter dehumanizing language. on campus. And so that's what those Post-its are up there on the right. And I say that to say, we're seeing at Aragon a particular uptick or improvement in their perception of their of hate speech being dealt with effectively. The other school that we noted, I happened to, because I was preparing for this presentation, and also I was looking at some of the panorama data, and it occurred to me to sort of have our student services team create a report of how many incidents, like what schools are at least documenting via the referral process the N-word as a hate speech on their campus. And honestly, the reporting is incredibly low. Like most schools have very few reports. It was in the like 10 to 15, except for Cap. Cappuccino has a large number of reports, like significantly more than any other school. And Cap had the highest growth of any school. Again, it was, we'd hope to get more participation. But the point is, we saw the highest growth, most amount of growth in their students saying that they thought they saw adults responding affirmatively when there was hate speech. And I was like, oh, again, correlation, not causation, but didn't see, it seemed like maybe there was something there. So clearly the recommendation on the part of our group aligns with actually what seems to work. And that is if we do document and hold accountable students, as challenging it may be. I mean, I think initially it will be a lot for us because there's a lot of it, right? And so it will be a lot for the schools to have to absorb. I think we'll have to talk about what that might look like from a resource allocation perspective to actually engage with it, because I think it would just be one more thing that administrators and others and deans and others would have to sort of take responsibility for. But it is so important to us to end this that I think we're seeing like evidence that if we actually hold students accountable, it has an impact on both the student's perception and actually I think it diminishes the actual occurrences. That's it for our presentation. We use that as an opportunity to also talk about some improvements that we see happening.
As a board, Trustee Land.
Sorry, I've been holding off. Now I really want to talk. So as a partner, as a principal of a partner district in middle school, this is my biggest struggle when we talk about hate speech and the N-word and how to address it. So I'm just reaching out to you now, taking my hat off as board member and putting my principal hat. Please let me know what's working, because we need to figure out how to do this at the middle school level too, because it starts there. It actually starts like late elementary and really goes into middle school. And so anything that's successful, anything that works, I'm begging you guys to reach out to me. I might just email you like now and just get it, because I'm really proud of the work that encompasses. And that was really one of the key elements in the grant. And I remember when we talked about it, God, whenever we first talked about it, I can't remember, was it 5 years ago?
The grant's not quite that old, but the work has certainly started a long time ago.
Right. But, so again, I love the examples at the end that you were talking about. I mean, and I just really want to learn that. So again, I appreciate everything, and I'm really being selfish by saying, hey, I want to learn. But again, I'm really learning from something that you guys are actively doing, and I'm really proud of the work that you guys are doing. So thank you.
Can I ask? Oh, go ahead. You go first.
Sorry. I wanted to talk about you guys talking about the referral process, because I'm actually one of the leads of our Student Equity Council at Mills, and we had started a campaign and we hosted an assembly. And before the assembly, the week prior, we piggybacked off the Panorama survey and conducted our own survey, actually. And we discovered that I don't have the numbers right now, but a very large portion of at least Mills were not even aware that there was disciplinary action for this. So I think awareness is something we should definitely be considering. And while it was our survey question, we also figured out how to present it to our audience the next week. So on a Kahoot, we were like, oh, did you guys know that there is like disciplinary action and there is a actual procedure to take place after this? And most people were no, and it was a like shock amongst the crowd. So I did want to bring that to your guys' attention, because obviously like teachers and admin do have to do it, but our students aren't even aware of it. So awareness is definitely something we should be taking account of too.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Trustee Lamb was saying. What have you heard that our feeder districts are doing? And because their 8th graders are becoming our 9th graders, so they're coming in maybe with some bad habits or ways of not knowing how to address these things. What have the other schools been doing? And I don't know if you've heard of anything know that you went to this conference with other superintendents. But it's just interesting. Yeah, anybody.
I don't think we know enough. I mean, I don't know if you have anything, but I think that's a good question that we need to get answered because I think we don't know what they're doing. We know that there are like equity initiatives of various kinds happening in the elementary districts, and there's a ton of obviously at the elementary grades. We've heard all of our partners talk about positive behavior support and sort of the traditional behavior interventions in the elementary grades. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see what they're doing in the middle grades because I honestly don't know. I don't know that any of us know.
I just want to mention that I think actually Carlo was one of the designers of the lesson that happened at Aragon. So those pictures of the lesson was designed by Carlo and one of his
Who to email.
teaching colleagues. So I just want to, since he's in the audience, I wanted to mention that because I had the opportunity to see the lesson in action when they actually presented it. They did it for all of the students during their flex time. And it was really impactful. I think they did 2 lessons, one in the fall and then one in the spring. And then the result was those posters as well. So should be really proud of that work. So.
And what are other districts doing in terms of the teachers, like of the Black staff? Is there a way of doing, I don't know, like having a group along with the rest of our sister districts? Like, can we like cultivate staff for our districts, other, schools that come in? I mean, how does it connect to the other school districts?
These are good questions. I don't know that we have answers to, but I think we could certainly, I think we should talk about that. I think it didn't even occur to us. I mean, it's been challenging enough to get kind of our own folks kind of rounded up and supported. And I think it's certainly an opportunity for us to connect. It's something we could even bring to the group and talk about, like, to what extent could we connect with our at least our middle grades partners?
We certainly could request of the county to see what kind of discipline or policy they have around hate speech, similar to what we've done as a district. We try to gather that and what our schools are doing. So I think we could reach out to the county and have them help us. I think it's a really good question because you're right. And Trustee Land, was referencing it, is that this is not something that students are learning when they enter high school. It's something that is prevalent in all schools starting, 5th grade.
Yeah, at the Black Educators Conference in the fall, I mean, we're not alone. I mean, this is hurting many people across the nation, and it's embedded kind of in the just the foundation of what people have learned and kind of been used to. And so it's just very interesting to see like what people are doing and how to address it. There was one group that had talked about it in terms of more of like a cultural, like a family oriented, more like traditional in terms of like the culture type of education, in terms of like, as we are a village, we are a community, and talking about our ancestors and all of that, and where this, where the root of this word is from and what it means and all of that, but just having a more like the reverence to our elders. And so that's just really interesting how they had approached this issue.
Any other comments? Trustee Jacobs.
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying about at Cappuccino. So you had an increase in reporting the incidents
And obviously the disciplinary action that came after.
and
as a
the disciplinary
consequence.
action that
Yeah.
came with it.
Yeah.
And
An increase in student perception of teachers, of adults doing something about hate speech on their campus.
so that's, it sounds to me like deterrence at work.
Yeah.
And disciplinary action at work.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Right.
Thanks.
Trustee Chavez.
Thank you. I want to thank you both for presenting. And I wanted to piggyback off what Trustee Land said about middle school. And looking, I mean, we have I think 6 feeder school districts, 5, because we have because San Mateo, Foster City is 2 cities, but 1. So we have 5 feeder school districts. And I know from my own experience, being around my own daughters and their friends, that something happens when they cross the line from elementary school to middle school, and just, it's like a warp, not time warp, but just walking through that door of going to middle school, they just become different. I remember in elementary school the kids wanted everybody to feel included, right? If you talk about a birthday party, you tell it to your whole class. One year I had 30 kids at my house and I had to push everybody outside because you have 30 kids and you have all the parents, and I didn't think they were all gonna come. Sure, invite the whole class. I said, why not? They all came, including the teacher. So it's just funny. But then you go to middle school and then you get into the cliques. I'm not putting anybody on the spot. Could happen to any campus. It happens to any of the middle schools, cliques, and you have peer pressure, you have your adolescents, and then to come into our school district and we try to peel that off and say, let's go back to when you were in elementary school, and let's be kind and considerate and respectful. And I just feel like it does start in the middle school. And it's just, that's, I don't know, we have to, Greg, speak up. In the middle school, can you fix the middle school? No, I think.
I already did.
Oh, you did?
Anyway, no,
No. So I just think
Working
going
on
back into the middle schools there's no easy solution, but I do think reaching out to our middle schools, to all of our feeder school districts, to find out what we can do to have that partnership there to really help. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation to both of you. Thank you.
I think we have an opportunity that just to piggyback back on what Terry's saying. It's like there is an opportunity for us as a district to be leaders and kind of bring others, the partner districts, into this, because I think we are much ahead of where they are. And so I think it's an opportunity that we might want to try to do this and help all the districts in the area.
So I got
Sorry, it means more work.
I got a comment, and I'm going to try to piggyback on whoever keeps piggybacking. So that's okay. That's okay. And I hope Sam Johnson doesn't come pound me into the ground. When Sam came here, it was a really unique, it was a whole different world. And the fact that I think that there's 3 kids in my family, and we all attended schools here, and we had two African-American teachers, and we just thought that was real. I mean, it's just like, because we had never seen anybody. I mean, and we felt, not me, our parents felt as though they could communicate to them. They could understand, they could understand the issues at home. They could talk about deficiencies. And, and the interesting thing, my brother was in a class with another, I've named my brother, but anyway, the time my brother got held back with another African-American student was by an African-American teacher who thought it was important that they really know they know the course content before they got sent off to the next grade to start creating deficiencies in their learning. Now, when Sam came here, he's probably only a year or 2 older than me, and he was right there as I was getting out of school. He ended up living with with a family in North Central, because he really didn't have a support network. He didn't really know anybody out here, and it was difficult, I'm sure. And I'm sure he had to learn a lot of things, coming out of Louisiana, that there was no handbook, there was nobody to tell you anything, and I'm, kind of like, well, okay, what am I going to do? And, and Sam's full of confidence, and, he did a great job, but it was not easy. And I'm glad to see we're trying to support, the teachers, the staff, what do they call it? The staff, the faculty, yeah, yeah, that we bring on board. So, I mean, I think there's a good purpose that's being served there. I enjoy the other thing about the events and stuff. I enjoyed them. It's a good listening session for trustees, because the one I was sitting at, boy, people let you know what's going on, and that's good. That's healthy. If you want to really know people's attitudes, you hear in a more informal session, more informal surroundings and stuff. And I think that's good for everybody. I just wish that, and it's not for me, that, all the things are right after school, which tend to be like 4 o'clock, and they had the all-day staff development because I wanted to participate, but I got other obligations, I would do more if I could. But thank you for the presentation.
Mhm.
Yeah, please let us know, in advance with, I know you do, but just keep it coming because like he said, I would like to attend and be part of the listening aspect.
I had one quick question. I remember earlier you mentioned that you noticed an uptick in sort of a positive view of like the language being used on campus at Aragon. And this might be sort of a big ask. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but is there any specific data? I don't know if it was from the survey
You don't have it
results
there,
or-
so I can send it to you. And you're welcome. There's an Aragon set of data. If you want to see the Aragon data, that's fine. And we've sent it to your site administration already, but happy to share with you the Aragon specific, and I can send Mills too. So
Thank
no
you.
problem.
I'm part of my school's leadership program, and I think one of the impacts
Great.
that your
Oh, I
grant
can
has
send it
had-
directly to Ms. Bussey then. I'll just send it to her. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like through our leadership program, I think one of the impacts of your grant, besides the work that like Mr. Cordy and other teachers have put in, Miss Bussey has also been sort of helping to have the whole humanizing campaign sort of it reverberates through the entirety of the leadership program. I think this year, as soon as we came onto campus, Miss Bussey was telling us about, the results from the data and how we needed to sort of mitigate this problem. And so it's been something that we've kept at the forefront of our minds throughout all of our events and even through the bulletin boards on campus. We had one specific month where every single bulletin board, it had to tie into a concept that was related to humanizing all the people on campus and creating those connections. It impacts the way that we try to communicate with our class members during school events and even how we communicate with them through our class social medias. And so, yeah, thank you a lot for this. I think it really helped to bring light to an issue, and it really did make me happy to hear that you noticed a positive uptick because I remember recently during our leadership class, we were actually talking about this, and like full transparency, we didn't feel that encouraged. It felt like there still was hate speech based on just our personal perspective, but to hear that like based on just the data and the objective fact, there is improvement is really encouraging.
Okay, thank you.
That was great. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item R. We'll just move right through it to item S, the Division of Human Resources.
Yes, the Human Resources Consent Agenda consists of the personnel actions, a revised job description for the Director of Student Services, where the principal of middle college is removed and many 504, Section 504 duties are added. And then the third one is a correction to the administrative manager salary range of a inadvertent deletion of a position.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda for the Division of Human Services.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any comments?
There are none.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Ms. Aquino, I almost channeled you and called you Miss McNay.
Mm.
It was Charlotte. Charlotte was here several people ago. I don't know. I was just kind of, I guess I'm just reminiscing a little too much tonight.
I think we all are.
Well, we're gonna.
You just say that today is Miss Aquino's birthday. I said, can we just say that? I guess I did say, happy birthday, Miss
I think you
Aquino.
just did. Happy birthday, Charlene.
Yeah. Item T, Division of Human Resources.
The first item is the personnel action. There's no specific recognitions, so we recommend approval.
I make a motion to approve the personnel actions addendum.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any comments?
There are none.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. It passes unanimously. T2.
The T2 is the resolution of non-reemployment. As an introduction, the district thoroughly reviews the performance and conduct of all probationary teachers each year and makes a determination whether or not the employment will continue into the following school year. This decision does not, if the decision is not to continue into the following year, it's called a non-reelect. And after a multifaceted, in-depth examination of our probationary teachers this year, the district has had 2 non-reelect probationary teachers. The official step in the non-reelect process is a non-reemployment resolution. Therefore, the district recommends the approval of this resolution for non-reemployment for one probationary teacher, as the other non-reelect was on the resolution at the last board meeting.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Aquino?
There are none.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
T3.
Okay, T3 is the district's proposal for a new contract or a successor contract with the Teachers Association. This year, the collective bargaining agreement with the Teachers Association has all articles potentially open for negotiations. There's 20 of them. The district's proposal contains revisions to 7 of these articles. A major priority this year is addressing the medical insurance cost and coverage. For 2025, one of our carriers increased premiums by 20%. These types of increases are extremely challenging in terms of the district's fiscal responsibilities. The Teachers Association and the district realized this, and both parties agreed last year to undergo an educational campaign for our employees regarding the effects of increasing premium costs and share the viable option of considering an HSA plan. And we intend to lay the framework for this joint educational campaign as we move closer to 2026. In terms of the district's proposal, there's a lot on there, but I have 6 highlights to share. One is to increase the allotment for ed specialists to proctor student academic assessments and increase that from 10 to 20 periods. Include clearer language of the expectation that teachers attend professional development days. Increase the amount of professional experience the district recognizes for newly hired teachers, moving that up to a maximum of step 10 on the salary schedule. Provide payments to employees who waive medical coverage for themselves and or their spouse. Clarify the expectation of teachers on leave in terms of substitute plans and maintaining their teacher of record status. And providing reproductive loss leave to employees. There's others, but those are the highlights.
Okay. Does the board have any questions or comments? Okay, that was for information.
That was for information. Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll move on to T4, the T4.
This is the, for information as well, this is the San Mateo Union High School District's Teachers Association proposal for the successor contract. There are 43 bullets on there. Some, are just corrections and revisions, but there's a lot of meat on their proposal. And so this is just for information, unless Carlo, you wanted to say anything? Okay.
Got it.
Are there any comments, questions? Okay. T5 is a public hearing. There's a public hearing on the San Mateo Union High School District successor contract proposal for 25-26 and the San Mateo Union High School District Teachers Association successor contract proposal for 25-26. I'll open the public hearing. Are there any comments?
There are none.
Okay. I'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to T5. No, T6, excuse me.
Yeah.
T6 would be the approval of the district's successor contract proposal.
I make a motion. Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the contract
I'll
proposal.
second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any comments?
There are none?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. We'll go to, it's nothing in U, nothing in V, and we get to W, the Division of Business Services, the highlight of my evening.
And Nancy can sing.
And he's so good at being concise, which
So
I
good at-
love.
He's so good at singing.
I don't know if that was sarcasm or I'm just going to assume it wasn't because we are so excited. All righty. As we're pulling up the presentation tonight, I want to first thank the fiscal services team led by Valerie Miller, Vanessa Castano, and Christina Tang, who really support this process. As I've noted many times before, they do 99%, and I'm probably putting a low number on that of the work related to this. So I want to thank them. We're at second interim. And second interim is really the turning point in the fiscal year where we move. This is the last presentation that you'll get that primarily focuses on the current year. And as we move forward, we'll really be focusing on the 25-26 budget as the current year budget kind of takes a backseat as we finish the year off. Tonight, I'll go over some key themes and takeaways, look at the budget calendar, talk about the couple of significant changes since first interim, go over our budget assumptions, look at the second interim financial report and the multi-year projection, which are required in the interims. We'll also talk about the positive certification that staff is recommending that the board approve. And then talk about the step down of one-time expenditures. And as always, we'll end with future considerations. So overall, I note in my key themes and takeaways, if you stop listening to me now, which I know President Griffin will not be stopping listening to me now, but if you stop listening after this slide, take this as the key takeaways. We're still looking at the long-term impact of the one-time COVID-19 funding. We'll hit on some couple slides at the end around those step downs as we have significant commitment in positions funded by one-time grants. We still have continued negative pressure from state mandated pension rates. While the STRS rate has leveled off, we still see projected increases in the PERS rates. We look at inflationary and interest rate pressures, and I'll add to this, there's been a pretty significant stock market losses over the last few weeks. And so it'll be interested as the state of California is very reliant on capital gains and stock market gains for budget, the state budget. I also want to note that we're in a strong financial position to face these challenges. I'll note later that we have uncertainty regarding some federal funding. And I think that the board has really kept the district in a really strong financial position in order to not have to rush into anything. We can, even though there is some uncertainty at the federal level of where the funding is going to be, the district doesn't have to immediately jump in and make decisions without all the information. So I want to note that. The governor's proposed budget, as noted in, I believe, at the end of January, the only two real important notes are that there's likely to be some one-time funding, although ongoing funding not really included. But more information on that as we get into May. I also noted uncertainty regarding federal funding. We are not, as a district, overly reliant on federal funding. So I think that's important. The largest area is under federal IDEA, or our special education funding, which is a little over $2 million a year. We also have a little under $1 million in the other title funding. Two things to note that we'll be looking at. Number one is around the Inflation Reduction Act, where there's been a lot of talk about making some adjustments to that. We are reliant on that for one of our construction projects. So we'll look at that. That is the solar project. So we are looking at about a $4 million expectation from the federal government on that. And the board just passed a contract at the last meeting to move forward with some of that. And the other one is around bond issuances and the tax exempt status of that. There's been a lot of talk about that. And so we're going to look at what options we have in terms of the Series D issuance of our Measure L bonds moving forward. In terms of the budget calendar, we're at the second interim point, which, as I noted, is the turning point of the year as we start focusing on the 25-26 budget. It captures all actual activity through January 31st in the district, and it has to be adopted by the Board of Trustees, including a certification by March 15th of every year. In terms of significant changes since first interim, the first thing I'll note is a not significant change is property taxes. No changes since first interim. The updates from the county is no update from the county. And then the two larger changes as Mr. Black noted, health and welfare continues to be a negative pressure on our budget. And based on the 2025 cap and open enrollment changes, we saw a $1.5 million increase in the district's contribution to health and welfare for second interim. On the flip side, we saw special education savings of about $900,000, primarily related to placements and contracted services within that department. So I want to thank that department for their hard work in really bringing our students back, into our classrooms to serve them. In terms of budget assumptions, I know this is a bunch of numbers, so I will just hit on a couple of them. Assessed value is the biggest driver of our property taxes, and especially secured property taxes. I want to note that in the MYP, we've projected 3.5%, but that will be updated as we look at the AV tracker moving forward. I think as of this morning, it was about 3.05% for 25-26. I'd also like to note in the salary increases in the out years, we do not have any salary increase projected, but as noted in the HR items tonight, we will get into negotiations with our labor partners. And so as we have updates to that, we will update our multi-year projections. One thing that I do believe likely will be changing is as we look at the PERS rate. The PERS rate projections from the PERS board were updated for second interim, and they're actually pretty flat as compared to the last few presentations that you've seen. But I'm very interested to see when the actuarial study is done at the end of this fiscal year, if those losses in the stock market continue, what the impact of that would be. Lastly, in terms of looking at the FTE, I think it's important to note that the step down of those one-time revenues and commitments is also included in that. In terms of second interim financial report overall, from first interim to second interim, we're pretty close. So not a huge overall change. And as we look into our multi-year projections, as I try to always note that we focus on the unrestricted side of the budget, it shows most of our ongoing major programs, along with the impact of restricted programs that require a contribution, specifically special education, and the routine restricted maintenance. So a big portion of our M&O department is included in the restricted side, but the impact of that is included on the unrestricted side. We note a little bit less than a 1% excess of expenditures over revenues in the current year, but I'd like to highlight that a large percentage of that, about 1.1 million, is carryover at the sites. So that's one time in nature, as well as some other emergency preparedness of a few $100,000 that's a one-time in nature. So I expect that probably at the end of the year, we will be about at a balanced budget. As I look in the out year, I see a balanced budget, but just to note, the two biggest assumptions, the 3.5% on the assessed value, and that we have not included the salary increases in there yet. So more to come as we move forward in that. Each reporting period, the board is required by state law to certify its financial position in terms of being able to meet its financial obligations for the current and 2 future years. At this point, staff is making the recommendation that we have a positive certification moving forward. I do think, just to highlight again, the district is in a very strong financial position, as are many of the community funded districts around, but a lot of the state funded districts, or what we call CUSP basic aid districts, which are right along that, are having a lot of trouble. And I think Superintendent Booker noted, many districts throughout the state, a majority actually, are making budget reductions right now, and not small budget reductions, significant. So it is a little bit different. And even some community funded districts that don't have as strong of a financial position are looking at that, specifically related to the step down of those one-time revenues during COVID. Speaking of those, we've listed here, this is the same list from our first interim presentation, but I do want to note these are the significant grants. These aren't all of them. These are the ones that still remain from out of COVID. They are, over $10 million in revenue, and it notes the deadline of when they need to be spent. We noted in the first interim presentation the step down of one-time expenditures. We've got positions sunsetting at the end of this year, June 30th, 2025. And then the larger set scheduled to sunset at the end of June 30th of 2026. In terms of looking at that process, we are here in the spring of 2025, where we're continuing to monitor the budget, exploring funding opportunities, including Medi-Cal, other grants, and other state funding. I don't know if I noted it at the first interim, but our Title I allocation actually did increase. And so that will be able to fund approximately 1 FTE from that list. So we're continuing to monitor that, but here's just a timeline of where we are in that process. In terms of future considerations, I usually note this is, a lot of these are what kind of keeps me up at night, but just some of the things that we're looking at in the future. Property tax growth. Secured property taxes is king in a community funded district. So continuing to monitor that almost daily. Phasing out of those one-time fundings, it's a big revenue source that came in and was really needed, but also is going to take a lot of energy in order to step that down in the best way. Based on the governor's budget proposal, we have not included those one-time funding opportunities, but I do want to note that I do expect there to be some form of one-time funding, but as always, the devil will be in the detail in terms of, will that be on a per ADA basis? Will that be on a unduplicated pupil count? Those are pretty big differences for our district. As noted again, step down of the positions funded by one-time COVID funding. We're going into negotiations, so we'll be updating the MYP as we have more information in that. Health and welfare premiums, as Dr. Black noted, continue to be a negative pressure on the school district and our staff. State mandated pension rates, enrollment changes, the enrollment reports that were that Ms. Arbizu brought at the last meeting actually noted a flattening and actually a little bit of an increase, which is a change over the last few years. As we look at that, we'll monitor inflations and interest rates, specifically the interest rates as they impact our property tax growth, and look at insurance and litigation. With that, I'm happy to open it up to questions. But tonight we will be asking for the board to approve the second interim report, including the related adjustments, and certify that the district can meet its obligations in the current and two subsequent fiscal years.
Is there a motion?
I have questions.
I have questions too. Is there, okay, trustee Land?
No, I wanted you to go first, but but I'll go whenever.
No, I mean, two quick questions. Can somebody write a Friday report and explain the potential impacts of the Department of Education chaos?
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah. I think it would be a weekly with just a big question mark on it right now. Honestly,
Okay.
I could tell you what the news is saying in the sense of laying off 1,400 employees. My bigger concerns right now with regard to that, and I've shared this with some of the trustees, is what does that mean to IDEA funding?
Yeah.
That's my bigger concern. Not to say that I'm not concerned with title funding, federal title funding, I am. But when we talk about IDEA, which is special education funding, how much do we receive in special?
Over 2 million.
Yeah, it's a lot of money and a lot of direct support for students. So I had a conversation with a trustee earlier today about this topic, and there are very few answers out there. I don't know if you're getting answers from your colleagues.
No, I'd agree that the question mark is there. I think just to note as earlier, a lot of districts are having, because of the financial condition they are in, they're having to assume that there will be large reductions because they're not in a financial position to not assume that they're going to be. I think my recommendation, is we continue to monitor it. I believe that we will likely have some answers before budget adoption this year of where they're going. So I'd be in a little bit more of a wait and see approach. The funding, at least as of now, has been approved. So the IDEA and title funding, at least for the remainder of this fiscal year, has been approved. I'm more worried about the September 30th, 2026 budget of what decreases, because I do expect there to be some, whether they be small or large. So I think the 2026 fiscal year budget for the federal government will really be where the rubber hits the road in terms of those funding. But I will also say that, I don't feel great about that. Usually I feel really good about those recommendations.
Okay, well, let's see if you can answer this one. What's the impact of the tariffs going to be on our bond program?
There was going to be an impact. I will say that I'm very happy that the Burlingame gym and the structural steel that we purchased is in place and paid for, and that our largest project remaining does not include any structural steel, which is the classroom transformation project. But it'll impact our material selection likely. So we're going to go in and we're going to, meet with sites in the next in the next month to 3 months. And we may have to pull some things off the table because the prices are just, increased too much in terms of, whether that be flooring, whether that be ceiling tiles, whether that be window coverings, AV technology. So we will look at that. There will be an impact. At this point, I can say that we're hearing structural steel is really gonna be impacted. And so I'm glad we're out of there. But there will be impacts, but I'll have to say, more to come on that. Yeah.
Just to reiterate Bob's first point, is there a way that we could get, I know the big question mark is a big question mark, but obviously I think you're very good at planning ahead, and you did allude to a couple things at the end where it's like, hey, I think it's really going to be in September. I think a report on that would be good and just kind of let us know where you're headed. Because I think if you have a plan and we know you're thinking about it, then we're not going to worry about it too much. So I think it's just give us kind of a heads up, kind of, we're thinking this way, we're going to be okay, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And I know I talked to Superintendent Booker about this a little bit. So I think if you could give us something like that, that would help us understand what potentially might happen.
Yeah.
But again, it's a crystal ball thing. It's a what if, it's nothing. But if you can give us kind of a heads up, like what you're thinking, I think that would be good. The second one on the multi-year. So I'm really used to reserve percentages. I've talked about this before. So I know in the assumptions you talked about the 3% and the 9%, which was 23, and I couldn't read the number because I'm too blind. 7.6 to 7.7. Yeah. Anyway, so those are the percentages that we know are the mandatory board approved reserves. And then what's the percentage above that right now, or how is that? I just kind of want to know because I see the decrease in increases.
Yeah.
But kind of what's our multi-year projection and the reserves as a result over the
Yeah,
next.
over unrestricted, and I'd like to apologize, Trustee Land, because you did note at first interim on that, and that I just had forgotten. So I apologize. We'll get it in the next presentation.
I'm just not that great at math.
Yeah.
I need the percentages.
Yeah, so we've been hovering around 19% in terms of Fund 1 unrestricted. When you add in the restricted, as we've noted those, it's going to be higher, but unrestricted is the focus. We've hovered around 19% ever since the June 30th of 2021, which is a little bit after right after I got here.
Yeah.
So we've hovered around that. When you take into consideration, we're actually about at the state average. School Services just put out an article that the state average for high school districts actually increased about 1%. And last year, they look at Fund 1 and Fund 17 together. We're right in there in terms of the state average. But that state average varies significantly, from LA Unified at a very small all the way up to districts with 50, 100% reserves. So,
And again, the huge decrease in unrestricted totals to 13 million in the second interim. Is that one-time funding, and that's where we're talking about that shift?
correct.
Okay.
And to be clear, that's one-time funding that has been authorized and
Right.
Approved by the board. I do not expect restricted at the end of the year actually to go down by 11.2 million, but I will say that the board has approved those plans. They've approved those expenditures, so we've included them in the budget.
Right.
I do expect them, some of them, to be spent over the 25, 26 year and 26, 27 year. But as the board has approved them, we've included them in the budget.
No, great. And then the last question I have is just on the step down. So you have the entitlements. Are these what's the left, what I would say, what's left over? Is that the allotment?
No, that was the original allotment.
So then where we left is what I'm curious about.
Yeah, I'll have to pull those numbers and send them
Can you send
to
it
the board in a weekly.
I'd like to know where we're at.
Absolutely.
Okay. Other than that, thank you.
Okay, Trustee Chavez.
Well, Trustee Land, that's a great question because I was thinking that that's the remaining amount to spend, but it's not. Thank you for the presentation to you and your entire staff. You guys always do an excellent job. And even though you said the most important thing is page 2, the key takeaways, all of us actually review every page. So thank you for that. I just have a couple questions. So in light of what Trustee Land said about the reserve, I think on page 5, it's 40.5 million. Is that right? That's the reserve? 40
Let me
million.
pull up.
That's the ending balance.
Yeah, the ending
ending
balance is the
balance.
reserve, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the reserve. So
That's
yeah.
the projected ending
Yeah,
balance.
that's right. Yeah.
Like I said, I do expect on the restricted side that
Right.
it will come in above that. So
Okay. And then the other question I have is you mentioned that this was special ed savings. What's that? I know, that's what I'm getting at now. Special ed savings of $900,000. Is that captured on page 6 under services? It would be 6 and 7, right? Under services.
on 6 and 7, yeah, it would
It'd
be
under-
on,
within the services line, right?
yeah, primarily.
Okay.
It's also in a very weird, any payment that we make for placements for students in the County Office of Education actually sit in the outgo.
Okay, so
It's
some
a
of it's in the outgo.
$2.3 million if you see that number. So we do have a little bit of savings in there as well. But yeah, it's primarily in the services where we have placements. And so.
Okay, thanks. And then I have just one more question. On page 10, the step down of one-time expenditures, the sunsetting for June 30th, 2026, we have a total of 10.2 FTEs. But
Correct.
then there's a note there that says the district received additional Title I funding, and we will be able to cover one of the FTEs in the sunsetting position. So that 10.2, does that include that one? I guess so then.
That does include
Oh, that
10.2, so
okay, so
the
it's
number would be
9.2,
9.2.
okay.
But
Okay.
we're continuing to go through the process, so we haven't specifically identified at this point because we're hoping that other revenues will,
Yeah,
come.
come from the
I noted that the state has proposed some one-time
Yeah.
revenues, and I know that that is kicking the can down the street a little bit, but it's kicking the can with important services. So I don't
Exactly,
want to
'cause
minimize that. It's
about
these are some important services.
yes, our social workers and our psychologists and mental health. I mean, a lot of my colleagues here, we can't say enough about how important that is for us. So wanted to make sure that that was really 9.2. Okay, well, I just wanted to mention this is great, and I know we have a lot of school districts even in the Bay Area that are having to go through staff reductions, and I'm really grateful that we don't have to. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. Let me see, board operations. X.
Yes, so what we're bringing forward tonight are the proposed Board of Trustees meeting dates for the 25-26 school year. A couple of things to note. We're looking at September 10th as a Wednesday due to back to school night. Budget study session on November 6th. December 18th would be the organization meeting. March 11th, that's another Wednesday meeting due to open house on March 12th. March 19th, the DLAC study session. So for your consideration.
Okay, I mean, it's just,
I just want to say I have a real problem with Wednesday nights. It's really hard for me to do this. I know with the back to school one, but I have a real issue because I don't want to, my open house my open house conflicts because I make sure it's not on the BHS. So then I might have mine right next to it. And so that's where I'm having some issues. So I might have to either abstain or just kind of ask for a reconsideration of some of the Wednesdays.
What a
So,
Tuesday.
yeah, we've got two Wednesdays, September 10th and March 11th.
I think the March one I'm concerned about next year. I'm not concerned about the September one. I think I'll be cool with the September one, but I'm looking at my calendar and March is going to be a problem. And I know that's personal privilege, but I want to be here. I don't want to miss meetings.
Yeah. Give me 1 second.
Could we
Would
postpone
Tuesday
it?
be an option?
Could we do a different Thursday instead of?
That because we've got DLAC, Ms. Aquino and I have gone through this over and over because I know I know what you're up against. We could try to move it to a Tuesday night if
And
that
I
would
can
be
try
better.
that.
And Superintendent Booker, I'm sorry, we made sure we didn't hit any religious holidays
That's
during
right.
that time frame as well.
Yeah, I
Yes.
hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
It's important to consider those things.
We
I know
did.
that's why I didn't worry about September. I wasn't gonna.
Yeah.
I knew all that.
So why don't we propose March 10th, Tuesday?
Yeah, let's try that.
And does that work for people?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry to be so.
it overrides my Bible study.
Ah.
It trumps it, excuse me,
What?
sorry.
What? Yeah.
Well, we want you to be here, Greg.
Thanks.
We value your presence.
Ditto.
Okay, so you've got your input.
Yeah, I need I'm a motion and a second to approve.
Okay, do we have a?
So
motion?
as amended?
Yeah.
As amended.
I make the motion to approve as amended with the Tuesday.
And I
Sec-
second as amended.
Any comments? Any online comments?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay,
Aye.
okay, passes
Now you
unanimously.
got me.
So,
I'm committed.
okay, item Y, future board agenda items, anybody need anything added to that? Okay, well, I guess meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
And happy birthday, Miss Aquino.
Happy birthday.